Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1148 of the War News stream. And today we have very big news from pretty much every corner of the world. We've heard today that U.S. officials are rejecting Israeli strikes on Iran nuclear sites as of today, this evening. Also, Ukraine has destroyed Russian military sites in Kursk, and that the China tariffs have been raised to 245% by the United States in a massive move escalating the trade war. And it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of news from around the world, as we've been hearing major developments from practically every single side of the globe. As we have been able to hear that inside the Russian Federation, the Ukrainian armed forces have been able to destroy an incredibly large Russian offensive effort near to the area of Grafovka, as 60 Russian soldiers and 5 vehicles have been wiped out in a failed attack to once again attempt to push the Ukrainians out of the Belgorod oblast. At the exact same time, the Russian Federation has also seen that a ball bearings factory inside the city of Kursk has apparently lost its bearings, as the ball of the bullseye was put right onto the facility and it went up in a blaze of flames. The puns really aren't working on that one. Maybe we'll rewrite that segment later. Meanwhile, we've also been able to hear that over just the last hour, the city of Kursk is once again under another drone attack as the Ukrainian armed forces continue to pummel the city on its tiny post. We have also been able to hear that the Ukrainian armed forces have stricken the facility at Shuya for the armed forces of the Russian Federation, responsible for conducting the massacre on the city of Sumy just several days ago with 2 ballistic missiles. Meanwhile, we've also heard inside the Middle East that the United States of America very recently, just a couple of hours ago, stated that they were denying the Israelis the ability or the permission to be able to conduct an offensive attack on the Islamic Republic of Iran and an attempt to forcibly denuclearize them and stop their nuclear weapons research and development processes. The United States of America has instead stated that war is not needed and we can actually achieve what we're looking for through pure negotiations because the Iranians are good people that are to be trusted. Just after that statement was made, Khamenei then stated that any sort of an attempt to relegate the Iranians and their abilities on enriching uranium to a weapons grade will not be negotiable, pretty much meaning the negotiations just died flat on their face while that statement was being made to the Israelis. Meanwhile, moving on from that, we have been able to hear of major airstrikes by the United States inside of Sana'a within Houthi-controlled Yemen, and we've now been able to see and hear that larger ordinances are being used because the efficacy of the U.S. airstrikes over the past few weeks has been minimal, and we are now hearing that the Yemeni government is requesting that the U.S. and other Gulf states join it in a possible ground operation and an offensive against the Yemeni Houthis on the actual ground, much like I suggested about a month ago, to be able to destroy the Houthis once and for all and bring stability to such a vital global shipping channel as the Southern Red Sea. Meanwhile, outside of this news in the Middle East, we have been able to hear that the trade war with the People's Republic of China has been continuing on as strong as it ever has been. The People's Republic of China has openly made some incredibly provocative statements today, calling the United States of America and its citizenry peasants. This is at the exact same time as the peasants have applied a king's ransom against the People's Republic of China of a 245% tariff that will be implemented incredibly soon against largely most Chinese goods except for the ones in the electronic sphere, which once again, most of China's exports are in the electronic sphere. We have also been able to see that at the exact same time, the People's Republic of China has been conducting provocative actions against the Philippines, or the fishing fleets of the Philippines, near to the area of the Scarborough Shoal, which is close to the area of the mainland of the Republic of the Philippines, and it does appear that the People's Republic of China is continuing their illegal actions in the South China Sea, attempting to claim a large area of the region, although it is under international law, or it is largely the sovereign waters of another country. We have also been able to hear some other developments inside the United States, as the Russians have now been denied port access to the United States for another whole year, and we've also been able to hear that the United States of America is planning on cutting the Chinese off once and for all on the economic spectrum. There is a large amount of news to cover today, as a matter of fact, a very large amount, and we have a great deal to cover. I will be entirely honest with y'all, the news days are not as big as they have been in the prior weeks, but they are still quite big nevertheless, and there's a lot going on in pretty much every single corner of the world at any given moment at this point. So moving on into that major news of the day, we have been able to hear that the United States of America has been able to stop the Israelis from attacking the Iranians, at least over the recent period of time, as of just a few hours ago. Moving on into that first, considering that the Middle East is probably one of our most comprehensive segments today and the kind of story that's being laid out, we were able to hear, and let me make sure that we can get this right here for y'all, that the President of the United States waved off a planned Israeli strike on Iranian nuclear sites in favor of negotiating a deal with Iran to limit its nuclear program. That was according to the New York Times and Reuters, which are largely credible enough sources that we are able to say that this information is true. Nevertheless, the United States of America has stopped the Israelis at the 11th hour from conducting a military attack against the Islamic Republic of Iran. Largely, the reasoning behind this is that the United States of America believes that there is a diplomatic dialogue to be achieved with the Islamic Republic of Iran. And while the country is ideologically radical and it is a highly unstable government that's currently in charge of the country, this does not mean, at least in the minds of the U.S. negotiators, that the Islamic Republic of Iran is a country that cannot be trusted and is largely going with the wind at this point, or whatever their whims really are. For this reason, we have stopped the Israelis from conducting attacks to defend themselves and largely the United States, and we are now deciding to go to the negotiating table with the Islamic Republic of Iran instead, because we believe that that'll be producing more beneficial results for the long term for the United States, Israel, and the largely wider region of the Middle East. We were able to hear that the United States has continued their negotiations today, and at the exact same time as the United States is continuing these negotiations, the Iranians are showing, much like the Russians, that they are operating in bad faith in every way that they can. As an Iranian deputy foreign minister stated today, that U.S. threats and military buildups in the region raise questions about the United States' seriousness and intentions to reach an understanding during the negotiations. This is coming as the United States of America is building up military forces in the region as a fail-safe just in case of these peace talks do not go through. It is also something to note that the Islamic Republic of Iran has not stopped its proxy forces during this time from conducting hostile actions against the state of Israel or against global shipping whenever the chance arises, which, much like the Iranians are saying, they're not really trusting the United States. What reason does the United States have to trust a country that's allowing their proxy forces to continue to conduct hostile actions against our allies and against our economic shipping interests within the region without any stopping or any slowing of it whatsoever? At the exact same time, we also got to hear that while the United States was stopping the Israelis from conducting their attack against the Islamic Republic of Iran and destroying their nuclear facilities and sites, that Khamenei stated that, well, actually, really quickly, let me make sure to get the right article, which is this one right here, that the Iranians will not be compromising on their ability to enrich uranium to a weapons grade. Iran says its ability to enrich uranium, which is used to make nuclear weapons, is not up for negotiation with the United States. That was a clear statement made today by the Islamic Republic of Iran. This means that at this moment in time, the Islamic Republic of Iran is stating that they will not be stopping their abilities under any circumstances, even a negotiated treaty between the United States and Iran, to be able to produce and field a nuclear weapon at any given moment of their choosing. This is also letting us know, for the larger part, that the Islamic Republic of Iran, much like we've been saying, is going into the negotiation in incredibly bad faith and is attempting to try and rig it in their favor so that way whatever deal they get, they are able to pretty much ensure that they still will be able to create a nuclear weapon, or in other instances, they are largely looking for the ability to pretty much just shrug off this attempt at negotiations and continue to buy themselves time to field and use this nuclear weapon. Nevertheless, it does appear that a lot of people have been speaking about this particular matter, as reports say that U.S. officials rejected the Israeli strikes on Iran nuke sites in order to negotiate, and a lot of people have been putting in their thoughts. A lot of people weren't able to vote on this one because apparently there was an issue with the poll, but we did get the results in, at least initially, and it looks like we're getting a second wave of results in right now. And so, Matthew, what are people thinking about this, and what are you thinking about this as well?
All right. So for the first time ever, we had a poll which was dead on arrival. I'm not really sure what happened with that, but it glitched and it showed 0 votes, which was not true. We had actually, I think, 500 votes. So the polls are rigged, as they say. But this poll right here is actually working. So I guess we're safe now. But 63% said that is a weak measure by U.S. officials rejecting Israeli strikes on Iran nuke sites. And 16% said it's a good measure. And 17% said, I need more intel. And honestly, on this one, I would say I'm a little bit on the fence about it because, of course, if the U.S. is trying to pursue a new round of negotiations with Iran, which in my opinion is probably going to be pointless because Iran's really not wanting to negotiate, they're in the same boat that Russia is in. They really don't want to be friends with the West, and they want to destroy the West. So why are we going to expect them to negotiate in good faith when that's the case? So, but nonetheless, if we want to negotiate, I guess it would make sense to stop the strikes because obviously if those strikes take place, negotiations are basically pointless. So I'm going to be sort of on the fence, a little bit with a 6% unsure. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that it is, in my opinion, a fairly weak measure. I'd have to be with a majority because, once again, it's becoming fairly clear right now, again today, and I sound a little bit exasperated because I am, at least at this point, with how we're conducting everything around the world. It's quite clear that the Iranians are going to be running circles around us and playing games with us just like the Russians are. There is no attempt by the Iranians to legitimately negotiate about this. They're either trying to buy themselves time to actually test this nuclear weapon and then field nuclear weapons indefinitely into the future, or they are attempting to create a deal that will be so close to allowing them to have a nuclear weapon that at any given moment in time, they would be able to create, test, and field a nuclear weapon, meaning that this is weak from both regards. Whether they shrug it off or whether they accept a deal, this is largely weak. I would say that it's as weak as the original U.S. led treaty in 2015 between Iran and the United States that was originally created by another president of another political party that once again was as weak as this proposition is. I believe at this point it's quite clear that decisive military action should be made against the Islamic Republic of Iran if they are not willing to accept a straight ultimatum that states that they will have to conduct complete denuclearization or otherwise the United States will forcibly begin to conduct a denuclearization of the Islamic Republic of Iran. It's an incredibly dangerous country with a highly unstable government. It is radical by every form, and I do not believe that this country should ever have the ability to possess nuclear weapons, and I don't really believe that any country in the world, outside of the ones that are allowed the possession of nuclear weapons by the non-nuclear proliferation treaties, should have access, abilities, or the resources research knowledge to be able to field and produce any kind of nuclear weapons or nuclear technology for that large part, unless if it's for peaceful means. And the Iranians are highly untrustworthy and would be using this for means of war. So for that reason, I would have to say I would agree with a large majority that this is looking to be a somewhat weaker measure. This is also coming at the cusp of even a third-party agency, the IAEA, stating that Iran is not far from producing a nuclear bomb. And that was according to a statement that the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency, stated to Le Monde. And that is a French publication, a fairly larger one. And it is once again showing us that even a third-party organization, the IAEA, which largely involves itself with peaceful nuclear technology, is even saying that Iran has the ability and the means to produce a nuclear bomb in an incredibly short amount of time at this point, meaning that we could be only a short whiles away from seeing the Islamic Republic of Iran at this point field a nuclear weapon. And that also means that the amount of time that we have to be able to react to this is starting to thin. So with that in mind, we need to be able to ensure that we actually have enough reaction time so that way when these negotiations fail, because they're quite obviously going to, unless we make the weakest deal possible, we actually have time to be able to strike them and knock out their abilities to produce a nuclear weapon before they actually have one and become a nuclear armed power. So with that, I hope that addresses that somewhat well, at least from what I would understand at the moment with the Islamic Republic of Iran. But moving on from that and on into some more news that we were able to hear down in the area of Yemen, we've actually been able to hear that U.S. airstrikes are still continuing at this point on the capital city of Sana'a, as heavy U.S. airstrikes have been reported in the Yemeni capital of Sana'a right now. Some sources are reporting the areas of Al-Hafa and Nasdain are under attack, and underground facilities are located in these mountains. We also have been able to hear that the United States is conducting airstrikes with far larger munitions at this point against the Houthis, and are actually using the B-2 Spirits based out of the area of Diego Garcia in the middle of the British Indian Ocean territory to be able to conduct these airstrikes against the Yemeni Houthis. From what we're largely understanding, according to the Department of Defense and other sources, it appears that these airstrikes have produced inconclusive results so far over prior weeks. The explosives and munitions that have been used have caused a great deal of surface damage, but they have not been able to penetrate or cause significant damage to the tunnels and bunker systems used by the Yemeni Houthis for nearly a decade at this point, since the Yemeni civil war began and the Houthis took a large amount of control over the major population centers of Yemen. For this reason, the United States of America is now having to use bombs that are tens of millions of dollars in cost each to be able to even try and put a dent or cause some damage to the Yemeni Houthis, as they are currently bunkering underground and largely just waiting for the United States to give up and depart the area so that way they can begin their hostile actions in the Red Sea and other areas as well. The Yemeni government, sensing that there has been a bit of frustration and a lack of progress with the airstrikes so far, has actually suggested something that we have suggested on this channel for quite some time. As Yemeni forces opposed to the Houthis, which is literally everyone else in the country but the Houthis, are in talks with the United States and Gulf Arab allies about a possible land offensive to oust the militant group from the Red Sea coast, according to a Bloomberg report. This ground action would mostly be the conclusive way to be able to completely rid the Yemeni country of the Houthi threat, because we have seen that time and time again the Houthis are really any proxy force of the Iranians is largely immune to air bombing campaigns. Air bombing campaigns largely cause a minimal amount of superficial damage in a short-term window, but these proxy forces are able to easily bounce back from that and are able to conduct their operations pretty much business as usual once those airstrikes have concluded. The Yemeni Houthis are largely no different. For this reason, it is highly recommended, at least in my opinion, that the United States of America conducts a ground operation in support of the Yemeni government against the Houthis to be able to once again have the Yemeni government, the legitimate government of Yemen, reclaim control of the country in the 11-year civil war, and not only that, bring the country under a stable form of governance that's not radical and is not directly supported through the pockets of Khomeini inside of Iran. This would ensure that the peace in the Red Sea would last at least for an incredibly long time, and an Iranian proxy force would not be within shooting distance of every single major vessel that passes through this area of the Red Sea, either heading to the Suez or out of the Suez and into the Indian Ocean. That seems to me to be the most surefire sort of a conclusion to this scenario, and once again, it is a quick in and out sort of a situation. It's not going to be a 20-year Afghanistan or a 10-year Iraq. Some people do not know this, but there's actually a large amount of people in Yemen that do not like the Yemeni Houthis. This is the current map right now of what Yemen truly does look like on the ground. And this area in red, orange, and yellow are all groups that are largely aligned with the actual legitimate government of Yemen against the Yemeni Houthis, which are largely the belligerent of the civil war. The Yemeni Houthis, however, control the large majority of built-up settlements inside of Yemen, and for this reason, the government forces of Yemen have found it fairly difficult to be able to drive them out or to actually win this war, and for this reason, the country's largely being locked in a stalemate for years. If we were able to get on the ground and support the Yemeni forces in being able to push the Houthis out and actually destroy them once and for all, we would not only be able to knock out the Houthis on the ground, but we would be able to make sure to isolate them inside their facilities, tunnels, and bunkers underground, and slowly yet surely knock out their facilities, much like the Israeli Defense Forces did to Hamas inside the Gaza Strip. That seems to me to be the most surefire solution and also the most cost efficient, because I do want to remind people right now that the United States is dropping bombs that cost tens of millions of dollars apiece onto the Houthis, each one of them costing about several Abrams main battle tanks worth of cash onto the Houthis to cause largely a dent and not really fix the problem permanently or even in the short term. It seems to me to make a lot more sense economically and as far as efficiency is concerned to have the U.S. Army or the U.S. Marine Corps get on the ground inside of Yemen and actually conduct military action against the Houthis directly on the ground with air support and everything else. Of course, combined arms would be a requirement. That's just an obvious thing. But in support of the Houthis, because it's not like Iraq or Afghanistan where we're attempting to completely overthrow a country and then build one from the ground up. Once we help the Yemeni government to quash the Houthis, the Yemeni government is back in control again, and we would just have to keep a minimal peacekeeping force there, and we could possibly get other countries involved, like the British and the French, to also maintain peacekeeping forces inside of Yemen, and we can just allow the Yemeni government to once again stabilize the region, bring it back under central government control, and after about 2 or 3 years, we can remove that small peacekeeping force, and things will be back to normal, and we won't have to worry about the Houthis conducting attacks on global shipping and our shipping through the region any longer. I feel like that would be a fairly surefire plan, and it does appear that some people, a lot of people in the chat, are actually saying that this seems to be a fairly decent plan. But before we talk about that a little bit more in depth, I do understand that Matthew's actually asking you all another question about the Iranians and their ability to possibly produce and field a nuclear weapon. The IAEA now says Iran is not far from a nuclear bomb, but fails to specify an exact timeline, saying that it could be weeks or months. And a lot of people have been putting in their thoughts. And it seems as though a lot of people are split in between two equally concerning options. Some people are saying that the Iranians are actually dangerously close to producing a nuclear weapon. Some people, almost the same amount, are saying that Iran probably already has a nuclear weapon. Some are saying it sounds like we don't know, but that's a small group, and an incredibly small group is unsure and undecided on this. But Matthew, what are people thinking about this, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so this poll is actually pretty evenly split. It looks like 42% said Iran is actually dangerously close to finishing development of a nuclear weapon, while 41% said Iran probably already has nukes, and 12% said it sounds like we really do not know. And I will say it's a bit interesting. The IAEA did not give an exact timeline as to when they feel the nuke is going to be actually finished, because we have heard from U.S. officials that it's about a week or about 7 days or so that the Iranians can actually finish development of the nuclear weapon. So I would say that I have a feeling that Iran basically already has a nuke, but it's not fully put together. It would take a few days to actually assemble it, but I think they have all the parts and all the materials they need to actually finish it up. And it's just simply a matter of actually finishing it, which is a very few steps. So I think it probably is the case. They probably already got one in reality, but it's just not totally assembled. That's my guess. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that they're probably dangerously close. I'd have to go with the 41%. That is saying that they're dangerously close, because the Iranian, once again, to point this out to people, they're not going to make a nuke and then just put it into storage somewhere. They're going to make a nuke and they're going to test it, because the issue with the nuclear weapons is that you really don't know if what you made has worked until you test it. Every country in the world that ever has had a nuclear weapon or has a nuclear weapon has tested it somewhere, some way, and that's when you officially become a nuclear armed power. Every single country on Earth has done it that has a nuclear weapon. Pakistan tested theirs in an underground explosion. India also tested theirs in an underground explosion. China tested theirs, I believe, in an underground detonation as well. So did North Korea, also conducting an underground detonation. The British tested their nuclear weapons in the outback in Australia. The South Africans, I forgot where they tested their nuclear weapons, but they did test their nuclear weapons somewhere. I forgot where. The Israelis have nuclear weapons. They tested theirs somewhere in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Literally dropped it off the back of a barge, waited a little while, and then detonated it and found out it worked. And then, let's see, the French tested theirs, I believe, in the middle of the desert in Africa several times. But every single country that is nuclear, also, by the way, I definitely forgot to mention the number one country in the room. The United States tested our first nuclear weapon in the middle of the desert out in, I believe it was New Mexico, if I'm correct. Or Nevada. I'm not entirely sure.
I think it was Nevada. I think it was
Nevada. And also, I forgot one more country. Whoopsie daisies. The Russian Federation also tested their nuclear weapon, I think, in the middle of Siberia somewhere. So every single country that does have a nuclear weapon has tested them at some point. You have to do that to be able to make sure that they work. Otherwise, you could create a nuclear weapon, believe it works, and it doesn't, and then finally, when it comes to firing the thing, it doesn't end up working. And then you have a whole bunch of duds, and you're really not a nuclear-armed country. So if Iran has a nuclear weapon, they'll have to have tested it, and they'll have to have announced that to the world. And we haven't seen that yet. So that's largely leading me to believe that they do not have a nuclear weapon. They are probably weeks or months away from developing a nuclear weapon and finally testing it, but that means that time is short. And I keep on pushing that idea time and time again, that time is running dangerously short right now with the Islamic Republic of Iran. We really do not have the option right now to be willy-nilly about this, because once they're nuclear armed, there's nothing we can do. And there's going to be a lot of people who then will be living under the threat, a lot of Americans that is, who will be living under the threat of the Iranians at any given moment on any given day, firing a nuclear weapon at the United States and killing you, and then people will be asking, why didn't we stop them? And we didn't stop them because we would have sat around and just kind of willy-nillied until they actually had one. And that would be a great measure of incompetence, and one that I believe that the United States cannot afford at this given moment in time. But nevertheless...
Are we so sure, though, that Iran hasn't tested a nuclear weapon? Because these earthquakes that randomly happened in Iran, some people speculate that maybe those were nuclear tests, and I don't think the U.S. government ever commented on that and confirmed or denied that those might have been nuclear tests. And somebody in the chat pointed out there was actually no aftershocks to these alleged earthquakes that were happening in Iran weeks ago. So I've always had some curious thoughts that maybe those might have been nuclear tests. So I don't think we can say definitively whether or not there has been testing, because we just really don't know. We haven't gotten that confirmation or information from the government yet.
That is something that is true, but at the same time, though, if that was the case, they most likely would have come out and publicly stated it, because why would they have negotiations with the United States about possibly creating a nuclear weapon and stopping that if they already had one? Then they wouldn't enter those negotiations. They'd just say, oh, no thanks, we don't need to, we already have one, so, it's too late. But they're not. Instead, they're going into negotiations about it, which shows they probably don't have one yet, and they're trying to buy themselves time, possibly.
I wonder if they're actually entering into negotiations, because remember how anti-Iranian this administration was when they took office. They were so hostile against Iran, and actually rightfully so, because Iran's been threatening the West quite heavily, and this administration was hell-bent on going in and taking Iran out. We put the B-2s, we put all these different naval assets into the region, and now all of a sudden we're flaking out at the last second, which is kind of a little bit odd in my opinion. And I'm beginning to wonder if maybe we've learned something that we did not know until just maybe a couple of days ago or maybe a week ago, that Iran actually has a nuke, and it may have a delivery system with it, or it may just be a dirty bomb in a sense that they currently have in their possession. We might have just learned that, and that might be why we suddenly shifted over to this negotiation standpoint, because we realized that if we attack Iran, they could use that nuke on Israel or maybe one of our partners in the Middle East. That could be it.
Maybe so. I mean, that's a possibility, but I'm still thinking that they probably don't have one yet, because usually once someone has one, they announce it pretty quick. I think the only country that really hasn't announced it and have tried to keep it a mystery are the Israelis, because nobody really knows if they have one or not, and it's kind of like the Schrodinger's nuke. Like, do they have a nuke or do they not? No one really knows. The North Koreans announced that they had a nuclear weapon as soon as the thing blew up. Like, the next day, they came out with a press release and stated that they had tested a nuclear weapon at the Pyeongsan testing range. So I think Well, actually, I don't think it was a Pyeongsan. Was it the Pyeongsan testing range? I think it was. I would have to go and check. I think it was actually the Pyongyari testing range. I'm not entirely sure on the name, but beyond that, they announced it pretty much immediately, which they could have avoided doing that because it's not like anyone really knew. Like all we saw was seismic activity, and if they had not stated anything, they might have been able to get away with it, and they could have just said it was an earthquake or something. But instead, they came out with a press release immediately, and really everyone else has as well. The Pakistanis, the Indians, the Chinese, the Russians, the British, the French, the United States, and even South Africa all were stating once they tested their nuclear weapon that they were a nuclear-capable, nuclear-armed country. Maybe Iran didn't. Maybe that's a possibility, but I'm still largely in the camp until I see definitively that they actually have a nuclear weapon. I'm largely doubting that they have one, and I think that they're still very close to having one, but they don't have one just yet.
Well, here's my question. The IAEA, which are allegedly nuclear experts, their job is to monitor the development of nuclear weapons in these countries like this, and they're the agency that goes in and monitors that to make sure they're not overly enriching the uranium, which could lead to the development of a nuclear weapon. So they should have the expertise to know how long they are to actually finishing development. How come they're omitting letting us know what the timeline looks like? That's in my opinion, that's an intentional omission that they're leaving out, which tells me that there might be more to the story than meets the eye. And the IAEA just keeps saying that they are dangerously close to developing a nuke, and we really don't know what that even means.
Yeah, that's true. It could be a possibility, but we'll really have to wait and see because we don't have anything definitive yet to really say whether they have one or not. So right now, it is Schrodinger's nuclear weapon. Do the Iranians have a nuke in the box, or do they not? Is it the cat dead or alive? That is the question we're trying to figure out here, and I don't think we'll really have a clear answer to that for some time. But beyond that, it does appear that a decent amount of people, just a sliver of a larger amount of people, believe that they have nukes, and a large amount of people also believe that they're very close to having one. Nevertheless, all of those answers are not incredibly good. All of those are very questionable and a little bit concerning to think that many people are believing that at this point. But moving on from that, and on into some more news that we've been able to get over the prior 24-hour period, we have also been able to hear that there has been some significant actions in between the United States and the People's Republic of China so far in regards to the ongoing trade war. And that trade war has been warring. It honestly is the most warlike trade war we've seen so far, as it just continues to get worse and worse. I'm not even kidding. It's getting more escalatory on all ends. The People's Republic of China came out with a statement today and called American citizens peasants, and also stated that the United States of America was oppressing and destroying the individual rights and liberties of the citizens of Hong Kong, which I find a little bit weird because if I remember correctly, I think the Chinese government was the one that went in and was conducting mass arrests on the protesters because of the extradition of Hong Kong citizens to the People's Republic of China back in 2019. I think that was more so them than us. I think we are actually the ones who were condemning that whole thing, but maybe I'm mistaken. Maybe the People's Republic of China has a point by saying that we, the American peasantry, were the ones who were actually oppressing Hong Kong this whole time by wanting them to be free and able to choose their own destinies. But beyond that, we were able to get the statement today from a Chinese minister, which we were able to see right here. And I'm just going to let the clip play without the with the subtitles clearly on screen, so that way y'all can see exactly what this Chinese minister said.
美国最大的贸易顺差地，但美国依然对香港如此加征关税，简直是蛮横霸道、无耻之极。这让世人更加看清，美国见不得香港好，是破坏香港人权自由、法治秩序和繁荣稳定的最大黑手。他不是要我们的税，而是要我们的命。美国一而再、再而三对香港进行遏制打压，换来的只能是其在香港的代理人的加速灭亡，最终必将反噬其自身，让美国那些乡巴佬们在中华民族5000年文明面前去哀鸣吧。
Sound a little angry at the
Yeah,
end.
man, he got mad right there.
Bro.
Honestly, that was comical as hell. Back that up for a second. Let's hear that last part. Let me hear that one more time.
在中华民族5000年文明面前去哀鸣吧。
I don't know why that's hilarious to me. I don't know why. It just like that tickled a bone or something like that.
Dude, why in the world did the last part literally come off as like one of those prophetic Chinese curses where they curse your line for like 50 generations or something? Like literally it was like that, man. They were like, let the American country peasants wail on their feet at the base of this 5,000-year Chinese dynasty. Like, it's like, bro.
Honestly, it sounded like he was about to crash out at the end or something. I was looking down at the chat and I looked up like, whoa, is this guy about to crash out? Like, what?
Dude,
They lost it.
Dude, the camera went off right after that and he went, almost lost my cool here. Like, oh man. But beyond that, gotta say that it was very interesting to hear them call us peasants. Actually, funnily enough, I apparently have not been caught up with the reality TV side of the whole American-U.S. drama. Apparently, the Vice President of the United States called the Chinese people peasants first. A lot of people told me that today. Didn't know that going into the short war video earlier today. But now I know, and I gotta generally say that with this kind of attitude that they're giving out, and also the fact that they're trying to say that we're oppressing Hong Kong instead of them, I gotta say that is a real peasant-like mindset right there, being represented by the Chinese. Like, I gotta be honest, folks. I don't really care if the statement was made by the vice president or not. I'm not really a big fan of the Chinese nation, and on top of that, a lot of what they say is mostly propaganda about their country. That most Chinese people truly do live like country peasants. I'm not even kidding. If you look at an average Chinese village, it is an incredibly poverty-stricken kind of a lifestyle. It really is nearly feudal, even still to this day in most areas of provincial China. But nevertheless, it does appear that while the Chinese have been calling the United States citizenry peasants, it appears that the United States peasantry has now applied what can only be described as a king's ransom on the Chinese goods. As we're now hearing, like Matthew and me were talking about last night, that China is now facing a 245% tariff on imports to the United States as a result of its continuous retaliatory actions to the initial tariffs that were imposed by the United States onto the People's Republic of China. This is something that I gotta say, it's getting absolutely insane. We already know that there's pretty much an embargo on Chinese goods. This is pretty much just reinforcing that there will be an indefinite embargo on Chinese goods because the cost of the tariffs alone makes it completely unprofitable and non-competitive to import any kinds of Chinese goods into the U.S. economy. Another thing that we've also been able to hear is that the United States is wanting to make sure that there is no intermediaries that act pretty much as a vessel for the Chinese to continue to ship their goods into the United States of America while trying to skirt around the tariffs. As we've been able to hear that the United States, in its negotiations with about 70 other countries, at least according to the claims today, has stated that they are asking them to disallow China to ship goods through their countries and to prevent Chinese firms from being located in their territories to avoid U.S. tariffs, per the Wall Street Journal. It appears that the United States of America is actually taking an incredibly militant stance against Chinese trade at this point, and is trying to completely cut them off from their largest trading partner. Interestingly enough, the United States of America doesn't consider China to be a major trading partner anymore. It still is major, but it's not as major as others. Funnily enough, China actually falls in a steady, solid number 4 as far as the significant trade partners that we have. So I'll go through the list and then list them off as the most important to the least important. European Union is the number 1 most important trading partner to the United States right now. We have a collective trade with Europe, both imports and exports, of $1 trillion per year. It's the largest trade of its kind. Also, our second largest trading partner is actually the Dominion of Canada, right up to our north, which we trade hundreds of billions of dollars of goods. It's around $700 billion with them in imports and exports just about every single year. Mexico comes in a close third, and Canada and Mexico are incredibly close because Mexico is somewhere in the high $600 billion worth of imports and exports every single year to the United States. China has actually fallen down to about the 500 billion to the high 400 billion mark per year in imports and exports to the United States of America. In terms of actual weight and volume, Chinese goods actually are larger in weight and volume than the amount of Mexican goods being imported to the United States, but once again, Chinese goods largely have an incredibly low value. Most of it's cheap, inexpensive goods being shipped into the United States, unless if you're watching those TikToks right now where they talk about, here in China, we make Louis Vuitton. It's like, oh, okay. It's like, all right, I guess those aren't really cheap. But beyond that, It does appear that the United States of America is attempting to completely cut the Chinese out from ever importing goods into the United States, even through some sort of an intermediary country, say, for example, like Singapore or anywhere else. Just to explain really quickly why I brought up Singapore, Singapore actually is one of the largest container ports in the world, and considering that a lot of Chinese consumer goods are transported by container ships, the most likely alternative for the Chinese to be able to ship their goods into the United States would be to simply take the goods, ship them straight down to Singapore, and use Singapore as a third-party intermediary to then ship it directly into the United States. They technically could set up a whole bunch of shell companies inside of Singapore to receive those Chinese goods, modify them a modest amount, and then claim that they were made in Singapore, and then ship them into the United States. Or they could largely lie about it and just say that they could make no modifications, stamp them all made in Singapore, and then ship them onto the United States. The United States is attempting to cut that out completely as well, so that way Chinese goods, quite literally, even through loopholes, are completely cut out from being imported to the United States. So we will be seeing how that goes, because it does appear that the Chinese have been incredibly infuriated, incensed about this today. But beyond that, I gotta say here really quickly, I know that I've been fairly critical of a lot of the U.S. administration's current foreign policy prerogatives in the Middle East and Eastern Europe. And while I do think that what we're doing right now against the People's Republic of China is so militant, it actually is going to end up becoming damaging to the United States, I want to have to say that this is one that I really dissent the least on out of the three. I don't view the People's Republic of China friendly at all. The People's Republic of China is an adversary to the United States of America and a major economic and military threat to the United States in the long term over the next few decades. While these actions right now, in my opinion, are being done too quickly and too harshly, and because of that, they're going to start causing damage to the U.S. economy, the damage will most likely end up being short term, as a lot of those companies that are producing these goods in China largely are, in the best way to describe them, American companies that just offshore themselves into China. And those companies are going to move because this trade's getting absolutely unprofitable. And as long as the United States doesn't just, start doing what I would say is the stupidest thing ever, which is just start slamming down 70 and 100% tariffs on everyone around the world, most of those companies are going to move out of China into countries that are cheaper to manufacture in at this point, such as the Republic of India, I believe it's the People's Republic of Vietnam, or the Federal Republic of Mexico, because those are incredibly cheap manufacturing hubs where they will be globally competitive still, but they also will be able to access the U.S. market easily and continue to sell their goods there. So we most likely will see a tectonic shift. But also another interesting thing about that is that China was a boom town and it's about to turn into a ghost town, because with the leaving of these major manufacturers, China will not have an economic base to largely work off of in the future to be able to fund and transition their way into a post-industrial economy. They will have never succeeded in being an industrial economy in the first place, which this is actually kind of the shocking roundabout here. If that happens, China might actually economically decline to such a degree that nothing of what we're believing of the Chinese right now could ever be realized or achieved over the next several decades. So this might actually end up being, as far as the foreign policy prerogatives, this might actually end up being damaging to the United States in the short term in a minor way, but actually beneficial at least in the long-term picture of the threat that the People's Republic of China is posing, because it will largely be destroying them at least in the next few years economically, and they most likely will find it very hard to recover from that. Another thing also that I have to add in is that while China can technically manufacture all of these goods and just steal the intellectual rights to be able to continue the production of them, they're still going to find it very difficult to be globally competitive. A lot of countries may have an issue with receiving Chinese counterfeit goods, such as those. There usually is a lot of counterfeiting laws that are present in most countries, although sometimes you can find places where that's avoided, like, for example, Chinatown in New York, which kind of is a little ironic when you think about it, considering we're talking about counterfeit goods being produced from the People's Republic of China. But nevertheless, there are places where counterfeit goods can be sold. But if India actually does end up becoming, and it most likely will be, the cheapest, most competitive place to produce goods, or Vietnam and Mexico do, that means that China, even if they steal the intellectual property of these goods and continue to attempt to sell them, they're probably going to find it incredibly difficult to compete with the Indians, the Vietnamese, or the Mexicans in that kind of a market, and they most likely will continue to fall into their economic obscurity beyond that point. So I think on this one, I'm going to have to give the benefit of the doubt. While it looks like it's going to be damaging, let me go check the Dow Jones. I haven't been checking it daily. Oh well, it's not. Oh, it's just kind of. It's just kind of like bouncing around
It's
there.
kind of stabilized at that lower level, actually. It's down, but it's not like diving like it was.
Yeah, it's not taking a swan dive into hell, so I guess that's good. It looks like it's leveling out. So, of course, it's caused some, I would say a pretty decent amount of short-term loss, but I do think that once these manufactories move to the globally competitive countries like India, Vietnam, and Mexico, that kind of an economic backslide will most likely correct itself within the next 4 years, and we will see that the damage was largely negligible, but we got a decent long-term benefit out of it. And of course, I do have to say, I'm still not a fan of what's going on with our current position on the Islamic Republic of Iran. It's far too soft, in my opinion, and I'm not a big fan of what the United States is doing with the Russian Federation. Once again, it's far too soft, in my opinion. And while I'm not an incredibly big fan of how this is being conducted right now with China, it's a little bit too hard, in my opinion. It still will end up probably being not too bad. It actually might end up being beneficial for the United States in the long term. So hopefully that's the case. But nevertheless, a lot of people have been just talking about the general trade war, as U.S. officials have raised the tariffs on China to a whopping 245%, meaning for every single dollar of value of a given good, you have to tack on an additional $2.45 of tariffs onto it, which is absolutely insane. I've never heard of a tariff that high before. But nevertheless, people are wondering, will things improve? The answer is almost a resounding no. A lot of people are believing that this will continue to escalate into an unmitigated, never-ending trade war. Others are saying that the United States will fix Chinese relations, which is a small group of people, and an equally small group of people say that there's a 50-50 chance that it could go either way. But nevertheless, Matthew, what are people thinking about this, and what are you thinking about it as well?
So it looks like on this one, are things going to improve? That's the question between the US and China. So 67% said no, the US and China will continue to escalate, while 15% said yes, the USA will fix China relations, and 13% said it's a 50-50 chance of it. And honestly, I'm with the enforcer on this one as well. I believe that out of all the things the US is doing right now, even though it is a bit chaotic, I will say that this issue with China has been an ongoing issue. China, of course, is a huge, I guess you could say, stealer of intellectual property from the United States. And they also have a massive counterfeiting industry in their country, which hurts American and Western companies very, very badly. So China has never really gotten a curb on that. And also, they have been actually ripping us off. Like, that's actually not propaganda. They are actually ripping us off. That is one country that actually was doing that. And now they're getting very upset that the trades or the tariffs are being raised so high on their imports to the United States. So my only concern with it, though, is this war is getting so out of hand economically that this has the potential to turn into a hot war because the actions the U.S. is taking to retaliate against China, it's going above and beyond. And while China may deserve it, China also can cause havoc if they decide to do so as well. And they could cause havoc by invading Taiwan and forcing us into a hot war. And we've been saying for weeks that's a real possibility. So I'm going to say that China and the United States are going to continue to escalate. There's no sign it's cooling down. And China, like you just heard on the video, they are getting more militant against the United States. And it looks like they're gearing up to try to show us a lesson. And the U.S. is also showing China a lesson. And it's going to hurt both economies. But I think this was something that was coming for a long time. And we inevitably had to deal with it. And it looks like now is the time. I just wish it was not amidst all the other chaos at the same time. But I'm with the 66%. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I would have to say that, in my opinion, I believe that this is going to continue to escalate for some time. The Chinese seem to be incredibly militant about it, and the United States seems to be militant about this as well. It doesn't really seem like either side's going to be backing down. It doesn't even sound like either of them have really made it to negotiating about this at all, but it is still interesting nevertheless. Also, I saw someone say, "Oh, buddy, you shouldn't have said it." I'm gonna have to correct you here, man. The Semper Fi EDC guy said, "Apparently, y'all do not understand how global trade works." Oh, buddy, that's a tough one to say right there. Tough one to say. LOL.
What aspect of it?
Apparently just all of it, I'm guessing. This has been in place for decades. It'll take a long time to rebound. We will hurt. I actually hate to tell you this. I actually do know a decent amount of global trade. Matthew can actually tell you that I read about a 600-page book on global trade just recently. Like, it was a fun read for me. I like that kind of stuff. Global trade largely is a very fluid thing. And generally revolves around where they can get the cheapest labor and material costs to produce their goods. So it isn't really something that is, say, like older industrial times where it was a national market instead of a global market where a manufacturer had to be loyal to their nation. Like, for example, International Paper sets up a paper mill right outside of New York City so that way they can produce paper to then be loaded onto the ships in the New York docks and then shipped around the United States. Nowadays, companies can move around fairly easily, and they have been moving around very easily, and that's why China's industrial prowess has already been waning as time has gone by. Countries like India are far more lucrative and a lot more globally competitive at this point because their workforce at this point in time is far cheaper to employ in mass than the Chinese. The Chinese are becoming economically uncompetitive because the People's Republic of China has begun to shift their economic manufacturing base from being an industrial one to a post-industrial, meaning that the jobs are paying more, and it also means that they're starting to sway most of the Chinese workforce away from those industrial jobs, meaning that the remaining workers are having to be paid more to do the same amount of work, meaning that it's starting to become uncompetitive, although resource prices really have not changed all too much. On the other hand, in India, because of the absolutely despotic state of their economy right now, while it's still rapidly growing, there is a large untapped manpower pool inside of the Republic of India that any given manufacturer can easily move into, set up a factory, and start production quite easily. We've already seen that over the past few years, from 2018 to the present day, this shift has already been conducted, and the Indian GDP is already beginning to reflect that as it's rapidly skyrocketing as a large amount of these manufacturers are moving their facilities and productions into the Republic of India. We've also seen the same thing happening inside of Vietnam as well as Mexico, as all three of these countries provide incredibly cheap workforces that are able to produce a large amount of goods at an insanely cheap rate, because mostly what comes into the cost of goods manufacturing on a global market scale, or really any market scale, is the cost of labor, the cost of materials, the cost of manufacturing, and shipping and handling. Those are really some of your most important costs when it comes to actually getting a good to market, and shipping costs, because of containerization, are so low that you can really produce anywhere in the world. You could actually have the fruit imported from Chile to Vietnam, canned in Vietnam, and then shipped to the United States, and it would be cheaper than doing everything in Chile, funnily enough. But nevertheless, moving on from that, it is quite easy for this to rectify itself within only years' time. A lot of these companies, especially seeing that this will be permanent, will be scrambling to move their manufactories out of China and into countries that are actually globally competitive, like India, Vietnam, and Mexico. They already were globally competitive before the tariffs, and because of the tariffs blocking manufacturers from China from shipping directly into the United States of America, it is quite obvious at this point that the move is clear. They have to go to India, Vietnam, or Mexico. So they will be moving their manufactories there. Setting up a factory and training a workforce to get those factories up to any kind of efficiency will most likely take 3 or 3.5 years, and by the time that that's been conducted, we will see that most of the economic damage caused by this trade war with the People's Republic of China will largely have subsided and will most likely be largely unfazed by that point, rather than the fact that the importation marks on a lot of these goods will change from being made in China to being made in India, Vietnam, or Mexico. So that largely is the case at this point. This isn't really something that's been built up over decades per se. Really, the shift to offshoring happened quite quickly in the 90s and the 2000s, and it was almost instantaneous. Before that, nobody had any business in China. You can actually see that in the Chinese GDP, that nobody was really doing squat with China up until the very early 2000s and the late 90s. And once a large amount of manufacturers started to move there, their GDP began to skyrocket. And now as those manufacturers have started to migrate en masse to more lucrative or competitive, I guess you could say, workforces, such as India, Vietnam, and Mexico, we can see that the Chinese GDP has immediately stagnated. So that's how it's largely working at this point. And I see someone saying, I see Simplify saying, exactly, the tariffs will flip-flop every day. Well, if they just keep going up, it's not going to be changing anything, because at this point, it's already been made completely economically non-competitive to produce in China and then to ship out from China. So if they just keep going up, nothing's really changing. It's really the same output. But tariffs on other countries appear to be suspended permanently from what we're understanding. It doesn't really look like the United States is going to be implementing tariffs again on Canada, Mexico, or the European Union. There's been a 90-day pause put in place, and the reality of the matter is that no matter how asinine a lot of people like to look at the administration that's currently in charge. The fact of the matter is that they really can't be that asinine, because the economy was quite literally exploding at that point and falling down a gutter, and that was going to reflect so poorly that was probably going to lose them a lot of their political power, and they may actually face impeachment because of that, because of the unpopularity of their actions. So they're still bound for the large part by economic success. So for that reason, the tariffs on other countries will most likely never be put back into place, and we'll most likely see that China is the only one that's directly affected, and the global market, or largely the global manufacturing base, will start to shift accordingly to make sure that they're still able to access the European and American markets and largely avoid producing and manufacturing in China. So with that, I hope that does address that somewhat well, at least from my understanding. Once again, I'm not a complete expert on this. Reading an incredibly large book about the topic doesn't make one an entire expert, but that would be my general understanding of it with the amount of information that I have read. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least on that situation. But while the People's Republic of China is still dealing with a pretty significant trade war, and also, I just gotta say, folks, every time I see a comment like this, I always wonder. Someone then comes in after I explained all that. These guys are very uninformed. Look, I'm fine with people saying that, but you gotta add something in, dude. Like, you gotta add something in as to how I'm uninformed. You gotta kind of, like, cue me in. You gotta say something like, I don't know, maybe he's uninformed. Has he explored this option or that option? Because I'll look into it, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But just telling me I'm wrong doesn't do me any good, and it doesn't do anyone else any good. So you honestly seem uninformed yourself, and you just don't like what you're hearing, so you're just gonna say it's wrong when you don't really know. That's how that comes off. So if you want to add in something beneficial, please, by all means. But if you're just going to say I'm wrong, you sound kind of ignorant. But anyways, moving on from that and into the area of the Scarborough Shoal, we have been able to hear that the People's Republic of China has continued their hostile actions in the middle of this pretty damaging trade war, has continued against the Republic of the Philippines. As we have been able to see here that the Chinese Coast Guard is continuing to attempt to deny access to the Philippines to the area of the Scarborough Shoal, which is a part of the Filipino coastal waters. And here is a clip of that right here. We can actually hear the audio of the Chinese Coast Guard telling the Philippine Coast Guard to leave.
09. This is China Coast Guard vessel 21612. China has indisputable sovereignty over the Hawaiian Islands and its adjacent waters. To avoid miscalculations, leave the area immediately and stay away from it. Over.
And then stay away
from it. Over. It's like, bro, it's like he got very just like plain language with that last part.
He said, make sure to avoid the area and stay away from it. It's like,
the area immediately and stay away from it. Over.
What's the deal with, like, at the end of the sentence, like, get like crazy, like right at the end of the sentence, like a burst of anger right before you stop talking?
Dude, today, man, I've learned that that Chinese people construct their sentences like this. Man, it was a beautiful day. The weather was really clear. Like, it's like they talk like that in every single sentence so far today. But also, we got another clip where a Chinese Coast Guard vessel attempted to cause a collision with a Philippine Coast Guard vessel, which we can see right here. They didn't succeed.
I'm just saying that China Coast Guard boat looks kind of rough.
Man, honestly, man, it looks incredibly rough, man, for real. Like, the R and the D are beginning to fade up at the top. Like, it's like coast... it's like, you know what the other letters are.
Look at the sign, just like marred up with charcoal or something on the side of that boat.
Dude, that's that nice Yemen River pollution right there, streaking along the side. That's sewage, coal dust, and a whole bunch of other things that have gotten on the side of that ship when it gets close to Chinese coastal waters. But you see it passing on by. And that's the end of that clip right there. But still, a very interesting thing to see that the People's Republic of China is continuing their aggressive actions against their neighbors in the area of the South China Sea. They've been doing that a lot, a load, as a matter of fact, because they just find some sort of a sick pleasure from it, those those Chinese Coast Guard guys, they go around harassing everyone down here. They harass Vietnam, they harass the Philippines, Taiwan. Hell, they harass even, I believe it's Malaysia and Brunei as well because of this thing. And I'll show it to y'all. The 9-dotted map. Let me go pull that up. The 9-dash line. Here we are. Let me go and see if I can actually get y'all the 9-dash line and show y'all. So, way back in the day, when Mao Zedong was, creating communist China, he drew up this map. This one right here. And here are these dots, or lines, right here. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And y'all are probably going, wow, that's like the whole South China Sea, literally all the way down to like the coast of Brunei and Malaysia. And you're absolutely right. That's just what he did. For some reason, Mao Zedong claimed that China controlled literally everything in the South China Sea. And that's been an issue in the present day because they finally had the ability now in the modern era to have enough naval force projection that they can actually harass everyone in the South China Sea. So China's been harassing Vietnam, China's been harassing the Philippines, China's been harassing Taiwan, China's been harassing Brunei and Malaysia. They're harassing everyone. And everyone in the area is not friendly to the Chinese. And the Chinese are continuing to try and exert more and more influence over this general area of the South China Sea as they just continue to push boundaries and press buttons. And that's largely what we're seeing in the Scarborough Shoal today, is the very same extension of that Chinese policy that they pretty much control the entirety of the South China Sea. They've even gone so far to actually dredge and produce artificial islands in the South China Sea and then claim that they are Chinese islands so that way they can create a territorial water zone around them, although nobody legally recognizes that and the UN doesn't either because those are artificially made islands. For you to actually claim an island and have territorial waters around it, it has to be a naturally forming island. It can't be one that's man-made. So with that's a little bit of what we've got going on right here because it's a little interesting, nevertheless. But the Chinese continue to act out in a very what we can describe a very uncultured and peasant-like manner against their neighbors inside of the South China Sea. But moving on from that and out of that little bit of news in the South China Sea, it is time for us to move on finally into the Ukraine war and the larger happenings that happened over here today. And I gotta say, a big thanks to all of y'all for watching so far. We've gotten about to the halfway point right now of the news. And of course, I got to give a massive thanks to everyone who's been watching tonight. We reached a peak viewership so far of 7.7 thousand, which is exactly the same number that we reached last night. And we've actually gotten a pretty substantive amount of views. It's literally the exact same amount of views that we got last night, which is crazy, actually, man. It's insane. It was literally an analogous stream, which we don't really see a lot. So I got to thank all of y'all for being here tonight. And I also have to say, if you've enjoyed, make sure to subscribe. We are very close to hitting 345,000 subscribers, I believe. I've lost count of that these days. So if you want to hit the subscribe button, please do. It'd be cool. Please be kind. Please subscribe. But, if you don't want to, there's no pressure there either. Nevertheless, I do want to take a moment to get into some very interesting and juicy questions to take a little bit of a breather here before we get into the remainder of our news. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so our first super chat question of the night is going to go to David Dornblaser, who put in a very generous $101 donation, which is the largest super chat of the night. And thank you very much, David, for supporting the channel very bigly, and we appreciate that very much. And I did not see comments attached to either one of them. Let me double check that one more time. And yes, no comments attached, but I do see here actually, no super sticker either. It's literally just support. So thank you very much, David, for the pure support. 100% pure support. And we appreciate that. And Enforcer, what say you?
I got to thank you for that massive support, David Dornblaser, and helping this channel to keep on running. Folks like you make this channel to run hell or high water. We're able to keep this thing running every single day, day in and day out. We're able to work like absolute fiends behind the scenes, thanks to folks like you. You help us to be able to pay our bills, keep the lights on, and keep food in our bellies. So that way I can continue to plump up for the slaughter, and Matthew can continue to just eat everything more than I do, and for some reason not gain weight. I'm very jealous of that. But nevertheless, I do thank you so much for the massive support, because if it wasn't for folks like you, none of that would be a reality, and we wouldn't be able to keep working on this thing day in and day out. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that probably well. And of course, thank you for that massive support. That's absolutely huge support. We are incredibly appreciative of it. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. In our next super chat, after that massive donation from David Dornblaster, and thank you once again, David, for that support, the second one goes to Old Warrior, who's another channel legend, and this time he puts in a 50. And thank you very much, Old Warrior, for that support as well. Very generous of you, and we do appreciate that very much. He said, China's most potent weapon in the trade war is the more than $1 trillion in treasuries, and when, not if, they dump them, our interest rates will spike huge, and 10-year bonds are already at 4.27%, which is high, and the corporate bonds are now about 6%, and expect chaos. That is a good point, Old Warrior. The interest rates do spike. When countries dump treasury bonds, it causes our national interest rate to go sky high, and also it devalues our currency quite badly as well. So China or one of those countries, I'm not sure if it was Japan, China, or who it was, someone dumped bonds. The last time there was a major escalation just about a week or so ago in the trade war, someone dumped them, and we saw overnight, literally, the interest rate spiked, and also the currency, the US dollar, started going down in value. So they have a lot more in treasury bonds, by the way. Like, they are holding quite a bit, and they are holding that as leverage, I would assume. So you're definitely right. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that, in my opinion, that actually sounds like it might be a bit of a concern. I haven't factored that one in personally, but it could end up being a pretty damaging sort of a thing. I do believe, though, that there are some additional things that we have up our sleeves, be able to screw the Chinese over exceptionally if that was the case. But still, that is a good point, Old Warrior. I haven't personally thought of that. So maybe we will want to tread a little bit more carefully with this whole thing, considering that that could start to throw the economy into absolute tumult if that was to happen right now. So we'll have to largely wait and see how that ends up turning out. But it does sound like that was a thing that I did not factor in that could end up going against the United States and not in our favor. But we will have to see for the large part on that one.
Also, by the way, I see people saying that apparently, or at least allegedly, according to what people were saying in the chat, the country that dumped a bunch of U.S. Treasury bonds, causing our interest rate to spike about a week ago, was apparently Japan. Whichever country it was, if it was Japan or China, the point still stands that Old Warrior's making. China holds about $1 trillion or more in our treasury bonds, and someone was asking, what even is a treasury bond? I'm not an expert in this, but basically the understanding I have is it's basically long-term debt. And when a country buys a treasury bond, they're buying our long-term debt, and they get an interest rate return for buying that debt. That's the way I understand it. But I'm not an expert, so don't take that with a grain of salt. But it's generally considered a pretty safe investment. So when other countries buy into our T-bonds, is what they're called for short, they're buying into a very safe investment that makes a pretty decent return. Nothing crazy, but a pretty good return. And if they start dumping it, of course, that creates a problem because now our debt is not secured with those bonds. So that's what causes an issue. But I hope that addresses it.
Also, I saw someone say that globalism sucks. I got to say this is going to be a little bit controversial, but this is the truth of it. Globalism today is the nationalism of yesterday. People don't know that. Historically, people inside of a country didn't look at themselves as a country. Like, a good example of that would be Britain. Even to this day, people in Britain don't really view themselves as British per se, all the same like we do in America. British people still look at themselves as Yorkshiremen, people of Devon, people of Wales. And they all look at each other a little bit differently for that reason. And that was well pronounced at the very beginning of the Industrial Revolution, when people started moving to cities like Newcastle upon Tyne to become a part of the new and burgeoning coal industry, or the coal mining industry that was beginning to pop up. People were coming from the countryside rapidly into Newcastle, and the actual citizens of the city of Newcastle looked upon these newcomers as foreigners that were coming in to destroy their way of life. And those were British people, literally just from miles outside the city, places like Rowlands Gill and Chopwell, that were moving into the city, and they were looked at as foreigners because this had never happened before in history. And so they absolutely hated these people, and they said that it was going to end their way of life, it was an absolute affront, and that nationalism absolutely sucks. And so fast forward a while, now we consider nationalism to be totally fine. You know, if you're in Britain, you're a Briton. You can move anywhere and be anywhere, and there's really no difference whether you're living in Newcastle, London, or Leicester, unless if you're, like poor or richer. I mean, the north of Britain's pretty poor. But beyond that, there really isn't that much of a difference. Now, globalism is kind of the new thing because technology and innovation is continuing to pretty much make the world smaller while also making its ability to produce goods far larger. The world is starting to shrink again. And now, instead of people just moving from the countryside around Newcastle, now people are able to quite literally go anywhere and everywhere along with the goods that are being produced. And that's starting to cause more friction, much like that was the friction of its day. Now the friction of the current day is globalism good or not? The reality is that it's just the gears of progress. A lot of people don't like change. I personally don't like change all too much in most metrics either. But this is just kind of the reality of the endless turning of the wheel of progress, is that this is going to be happening. So, I get where you're coming from with it. But the thing is that to continue to see the wheels of progress turn, this is just a part of the unwelcome side of that kind of a wheel of progress, if you want to put it that way. A lot of people don't like it. I definitely get it. But at the same time, we want to continue to be able to be the country that we are these days and to have that kind of prosperity. We have to accept the good with the bad, if you want to put it that way. So I hope that does address that well. And Mason Miami put it well. Like everything else, it has its benefits and its consequences. It has its goods and its bads. Everything has its goods and its bads. Like a lot of people would think that us running this channel, it's nothing but good. And that's true. I mean, there's a lot of good things to come to running this channel. But there's also some bad things to come into running this channel. Like, for example, stalkers and lunatics and things like that we don't really talk about too much on air because we just kind of quietly deal with those off air. But, there's always a double-edged sword to everything. You would think that being a YouTuber like us is always primroses and sunshine and it's perfection, but there's always a double edge to everything. There's good and bad that come with it. Otherwise, the good wouldn't be good and the bad wouldn't be bad because you'd have nothing to contrast it with to know if it was good or bad. But anyways, I hope that does address it the best I can, or at least kind of the reality of the whole thing. But with that, I hope that does address that well, and I thank you once again for support, Old Warrior, and helping this channel to keep on running, because you were an old guard and channel legend around these parts, and we thank you massively for your support and helping us to keep this thing on rolling. And so with that, huge thanks to you once again, and we are on to the final question of this segment, and then we're going to be moving on to the remainder of our news.
And this one goes to James Hughes, who puts in a 50 as well. And thank you very much, James, for also being a longtime channel legend and supporting us in a very big way. And we do appreciate it, and it does mean a lot to us. And James said, why do you think the U.S. president is going all in on the trade war with China? And do you think it's related to the Wuhan whirlybird?
I don't think so. I think it's, let me try and think of motivation. I'll be honest, like, this is my take. People take everything as political, but this is just my take, folks. So just take it for what it is. This is how I'm looking at it. I don't really know what he's doing because he doesn't really explain anything well at all. Like, he'll just come out and say something like, China, they trade with us, that's not good, and there isn't really like an in-depth explanation or anything, and then none of the people that he has, when you ask them the questions, they really don't know either, because I guess they don't get a good explanation either. So I don't really know. I don't really know what the thing is against China. I mean, maybe it's the same thing I say for the reasons why I'm against China, but it's incredibly hard to tell because, the guy doesn't really, have good elocution skills to be able to get it out. So I really don't know. But if I had to take a shot at it...
I'll go right ahead. I thought you were finishing up.
If I had to take a shot at it, why he doesn't like the Chinese, it's largely not for personal reasons. It may actually be because of some kind of strategic planning, like I say, where the Chinese are openly an adversary of the United States of America and largely position themselves to be ideologically, militarily, and economically an enemy of the United States. And these actions are being taken to thwart those kinds of efforts pretty much at their source. Maybe so. That would be my best guess. But Matthew, what were you about to say?
I was about to say on the China trade situation, I think that the president is actually motivated by a legitimate interest here. There's nothing like an ulterior motivation behind it. China is one of our number one geopolitical rivals in the world. Economically, they have been ripping us off. That's a very true statement. Like I said before, they've been stealing our intellectual property, and also they've been undercutting our national manufacturing base for whatever's left of it by outsourcing their labor extremely cheap and basically having no labor laws whatsoever in China. And they undercut everything we've done. And part of that is the fault of our businesses here in America by being greedy and thinking, let's just abandon the United States and run to China because it's cheaper and I want to make more money. It is partially to blame on the U.S. Business owners, but at the same time, though, China has been basically a bastion to basically do that intentionally to harm the United States. And now China has built up a pretty large military, and they're now threatening our interests. So we've essentially helped fund our enemies with this. So I think it's pretty straight up. We don't want our adversaries, which China being number one, we don't want them to be so economically powerful that they're able to finance a major war against the West. And we're trying to basically cripple them at this point. And I would say that's a wise move. Now, we have to be careful to mitigate the damage to our economy because, once again, it's a symbiotic relationship between China and the United States because that's just the way it's been for over a decade, or at least more than decades. And we got to be careful with that because if we get a little too carried away and China tries to screw us over, then we screw them over, we could end up decimating both economies, which would not be good for anybody. So it's a very careful balance. But I think generally it's motivated by good interests for the United States, but it's just very tricky.
That's a decent way to put it. I see a lot of people saying that it's just personal. I don't really know how it could be personal. Like just to be honest, maybe there's something I'm not seeing that y'all are seeing. I don't really know how it could be personal though. But I see it more so through my strategic lens. Maybe I'm biased because I look at it through a strategic lens, so I would try and justify it by the best logical means I have. But I think it's more so a strategic purpose than anything. But I see some people saying, let's see here. I want to see if I can find some things that have been said. Let's see here. Someone said, China is sending Fent to the United States and dropping people like flies. I don't really think that's it. Because the thing is that there are drugs coming in from everywhere. Like, just being honest, there's drugs coming into the United States from everywhere. And if we were wanting to have a problem with everyone who was loosely affiliated with shipping drugs in, we would have a problem with almost everyone in the northern part of South America and also everyone in Central America because the cartels operate heavily in those areas. But we really don't see that too much. Like, a little bit of a ruffled feather here and there, but not really a lot. And those drugs kill as many people as fentanyl would, in reality. I
would disagree.
It doesn't kill as quickly, dude. But people overdose on just raw cocaine and you end up dying. So it's like it's not as in the high of numbers as in as fast amount of time, but it does happen over time.
Fentanyl is much, much more dangerous than any of those drugs combined. Fentanyl, in even small amounts, can kill a human. Like it's that dangerous. And China is the single greatest source of fentanyl in the world. They manufacture the most of it, and they actually ship some of that fentanyl to Mexico to cross over the United States border by the cartels to get that into America. And I think the cartels probably get a cut of it, I would assume, because they probably don't do anything for free. But a lot of the world's fentanyl does come from China. It gets into the United States through different means. Like, for example, some comes through Canada, probably not the majority of it. The majority probably comes through Mexico. And also they do bring it in on vessels as well, and also planes from time, to my understanding. So, no, China does propagate the fentanyl crisis the most of anybody by far.
I mean, that's true, but at the same time, though, I feel like that's not the main motivation behind this, though, is that they're shipping in Fent. I feel like that's almost like the Russians saying we're invading Ukraine over the biolabs. It's just something easy for people to tack onto, but that doesn't get into the depths of things. I feel like that's more so what that is. Because it is a bit of an issue, not saying the Ukrainian biolabs existed here. It is a bit of an issue with China shipping fentanyl into the United States, but I don't think that's the primary reason as to why we're doing this, because usually that really isn't top priority on considerations when making kinds of actions like these. Usually there's more of a strategic sort of an aspect at play than, just a humanitarian side of things. So that's what I would
The fentanyl crisis here in the United States, I would argue, has a humongous economic impact. Like, forget for a minute the humongous human impact it's having. Obviously, it's ruining tons of people's lives because once people, I don't know how some people look at it. I would say once people are goofy enough to try fentanyl because it's a goofy decision in the first place. I know some people are gonna be like, well, some people just happened to run across it and they got addicted. They shouldn't have tried it in the first place. But let's forget that for a second. When people finally try it, they get hooked on it. Other people around them might try it because now they're seeing this person using it and start spreading like a virus. All these people start getting addicted to it. And now those people, which would have led productive lives and added to the country's GDP, now they are a humongous drag on the system. And we have to put massive resources into trying to cure their addiction if it's even possible in the first place. So I would say economically, the fentanyl and drugs are extremely destructive to an economy. China found that out back during their opioid crisis. They had a huge crisis with that. The opioids went there, and then they found out that can be very detrimental to our economy. So they dealt with that. And now they're using the same weapon against us, and we're dealing with that problem in the modern day.
That's true. But Matthew, the easiest defense against Chinese fentanyl is just people not doing drugs. Like, that's
Yeah.
kind of like the easiest one. And I know a lot of people are going to be, oh, but it's got to be safe. Look, the thing to me is that I really don't care if you do it. But the smart thing to do is not do it. Like, that's just the reality of it. Like, I know people are like, oh, but I ought to be able to drink myself until I go into cirrhosis, and I ought to be able to, do drugs until I possibly go into an overdose. But my thing, like, I'm just speaking on my personal experience of how I live my life. I don't touch things that could end up being detrimental to one's health or well-being. So I just don't touch any kinds of drugs, don't really touch any alcohol, don't really smoke anything, because I know that it's not going to be beneficial to one's long-term mental and physical health. So I just generally avoid it. Some people, some people who do that, I just gotta say, this is just my honest take. It's a very low intelligence kind of a thing to go try drugs when literally you grow up in an educational system that is constantly preaching, don't do drugs. They're devastating to your health and can possibly kill you. And then some people go, oh, well, I'm going to go try cocaine. It's like, that's just, that seems to be a little bit like nose blind to me. So, honestly, it's like, I get the whole thing about the fent coming from China, but at the same time, it's like, if people weren't goofy enough to just, do drugs in the United States, it wouldn't even be an issue.
It comes down to the environment of a person, I think, because me personally, me and Andrew were around drugs a lot, not because we had them, but because other people had them where we went to school and grew up, because there's a lot of that happening. People were selling drugs, people were using drugs, stuff like that. And not at one point did I ever say, I'm going to try that. Not anything. I didn't touch a single thing because I knew how dangerous it was. I'd seen, honestly, I'd seen family members, distant family members, suffer from that type of addiction. I was like, I cannot touch that under any circumstance. It destroys your life, and there's no coming back from it. Or if you can come back from it, you're very lucky. So I never touched it. But the thing is, though, if people are around drugs their entire life and they're raised up around them, let's say parents are using them or siblings are using them, it becomes a lot lower barrier to entry for using drugs and becomes a little bit more acceptable in their minds. But education is key, though, to try to make people not get on drugs, because until people see the disaster of using drugs and what that leads to, which is the destruction of your entire life, then people are going to try them. And once they try them, they get hooked. And then that devil's got them at that point.
And I see some people bringing up reasons as to why, people get into it. It's people have tough times. There's a lot of stress. Here's my take. I don't know, maybe we deal with stress well, but we've dealt with stress a good bit, running the show and things before. We're not going to get into our personal lives a lot, but there's been a great deal of stress that Matthew and me have dealt with. Whenever we tell the story to some people, they're always like, oh my God, that's a lot. And I've never really had an inclination to be like, man, I ought to just start snorting lines of coke. I've just never really been one of those people to, just go, wow, that would really help numb the pain. Honestly, I just kind of deal with it and keep going. That's how we've done it. That's how we've done it the whole time we've been running the show. There's been all kinds of stuff, honestly, insanely crazy stuff that's been going on, not even directly related to YouTube, just other stuff that we don't even mention on air, and we just truck through it and just keep going, and we don't do it. And I just, feel like that's kind of generally how I just deal with it. Like maybe people have a different way. Maybe I don't understand other folks, and I'm not saying I am, but that's just how I've dealt with it. So that would be my take. But that is what it is. Someone came in here and just was blasting as there. Oh my God, some loser stuck in the '90s still about gateway drugs. Well, look, man. If it was not true, then how in the hell do people just keep on dropping dead from fentanyl? Do they just go, you know what? I'm just going to wake up and try fent one day and then drop dead? No. There's a little bit of a climbing ladder to that. It's kind of like how someone starts with one drink and then they become an alcoholic a couple of years later by having another drink on top of that first drink each time and a little bit more, because they start getting used to the amount of alcohol they're having, and they have to have some more to have a buzz. That kind of a thing. That's how I look at it. But anyways,
well, it's a tough thing because I will say this: I've never been addicted to substances, but I can understand how people could start using something. And I'm not people out there like y'all are judging people that get addicted. I'm not judging people that get addicted. Some people try it out of ignorance. They don't know what it's going to lead to, so they try something. They're young. People can make mistakes. I'm not saying that if you make a mistake you're an idiot, but it's certainly not a good decision. I will say that. But the people that do get addicted, I hope they can get cured from it. Like, I'm not saying, oh, they deserve what they got because they tried drugs. I hope they get cured from it. But if you're listening to this and you have the knowledge, the predisposition to know how destructive drugs are going to be, then don't try them. Don't touch them. That's just as simple as it gets. Don't go experimenting around with one type of drug like marijuana or something. You can use it if you want to, but in my book, just don't touch it. Don't take the risk. There's no point in it. I just don't see a point.
I really don't see a point either. And I see a lot of people trying to justify it and all that. Like, look, folks, I just got to be honest. I don't see a point in it. Like, to be entirely honest with y'all, I don't really see the point of making it illegal, but at the same time, I wouldn't recommend people using it. I think honestly, the thing is that you ought to say it's detrimental to your health. It can kill you, and there's a good chance you'll get addicted to it. So just don't do it. But another thing I gotta say is that some people are like, well, maybe they just don't know. Look, I grew up in the school system, and I know that other people grew up in the school system that are 20 and 30 years older than me, and we all have the same story. The DARE people come in, and they tell you all about drugs. Happens like every 2 months in school for 12 straight years until you graduate. And they're always coming in, they're like, this is a marijuana. No, this is a cocaine. You don't do these, because this is what happens. And then they show you pictures of people's teeth falling out, and they're getting scabby and stuff. And then, they drop dead from an overdose one day. And they're like, don't do it. So, the whole ignorance thing doesn't really work, considering that literally any school from the inner city out into the country is telling you not to do drugs, and then people are like, I'm going to be edgy, I'm going to do a line of coke, and then it moves on from there. It's like...
And also, someone said here, a drug addiction has a genetic origin. Y'all are talking in very antiquated, ignorant ways. I have family members that are addicted to drugs, and I've lost a family member to fentanyl, actually. So I'm very familiar with it. I know how that is and how detrimental that stuff is. And, you can say, first of all, I'm not going to, if the science says it can run in genetics, and I'm not going to dispute that. But at the same time, though, even if it runs in your genetics, it's still a conscious choice to go use the drug. So don't make the conscious choice to go use it, especially if you know you're predisposed, if that's true, to have a disposition to use drugs or get addicted to it. Definitely don't touch it. Do not touch them. So, and people are saying, oh, you're 24 years old. I've been through things, and I'm not going to get into it here on the stream. I've been through things in my life that are horrendous, that I've never even spoken on the stream about. Both of us have, actually, and we're not getting into all that here, but we've been through terrible things, and I've not turned to drugs over it. Your last option is not to turn to drugs. That's just not the case.
Also, I see a lot of people, look, folks, goodness, I don't know how people do this. I sat there and talked about the DARE programs and what they were saying. I said, this is weed, this is cocaine, this is what cocaine does to you, this can kill you. And then people say, we can't kill you. I didn't even say that. I was talking about cocaine at that point. So, get on the right page. But also, let's see. Someone said, can the enforcer do a stream without his coffee drug? Oh, hell yeah. I've been doing that for a month now. I just haven't mentioned it, but I don't drink coffee anymore at all. I just stopped. And it, I just kept going. There's really no difference. I haven't, no joke, have not drank coffee in about a month. Matthew can attest to that, because I started getting bad headaches. I really couldn't sleep. And I just said, you know what? I'm stopping drinking coffee. Stop drinking coffee. And I've been running shows just fine. So, that was how I did it. So, it is what it is. Anyways, with that, we're getting long-winded here. There's always a rabbit hole that pops up in these. But nevertheless, I do thank you so much once again for the support, James Hughes, and helping this channel to keep on running. And I hope that does address that the best we can. But it is time for us to move on from this question segment and on into the remainder of this news. As we've been able to hear in the Russian Federation, that the Ukrainians have been able to exact vengeance for the attacks that the Russians conducted on Sumy. As we were able to see the Ukrainian long-range drones slam the base that unit was based out of, pun intended. Here's the clip. You see it coming on in. Hide your popcorn, everyone. The seagulls are here.
Сука! Я чуть не родила! Ебать!
Well, you see them watching it come in from another angle here.
Блять, он прям к нам!
Oh!
Oh,
А, у меня с мурашки, блядь.
damn, this guy's losing it.
А вон там самолет, смотри! Видишь? Да. Нет, все в ту же сторону. Ты чё, блядь, сбивай опять, ёб твою мать!
And here it comes again.
And what it hit? What was the exact target of those?
It was a military base that housed the unit that conducted the rocket attack on Sumy.
Oh wow, they got some really quick justice actually. That's crazy, and it hit dead on too. That was a hell of a hit.
Yeah, that's their facility right here in the middle of the town. And we also got to see another clip from inside the building when the strike happened on the 112th Brigade. Do y'all want to see it from the inside POV? Let's take a gander. Блядь, what is going on around here?
А вы что в шкаф вообще? Ебать, нормально? Видишь, а в окно залетает.
Oh, what's that? Is that machine gun fire?
Бля, они не собьются.
Soldiers on the ground like they're like helpless or something. I thought these guys were soldiers.
Well, I think they're largely helpless, man, because it looked like that wall got blown out right there. Oh!
Kool-Aid Man jumps to the wall. Hello there.
No, man, he jumps through the wall. Oh, yeah. It's like, yeah, let's go. Oh, but anyways, nice to see that they were able to hit the 112th Brigade's main facility that they operate from. Very nice to see. Meanwhile, moving past Moscow, because that's more so of a you know, I'm going to skip the Moscow news. It's more negotiating news, and honestly is a non sequitur kind of an issue, so we're just going to skip past that. Moving on down to Kursk, we did get to see that the Ukrainians did hit a ball bearing plant, and it looks like they got a real bearing on the location and were able to put a ball on it, or they got on the ball and they hit it, because the fire was tremendous, and it appears that it caused a significant amount of damage to such a vital facility needed for Russian wartime production. Take a look at this clip. Oh, and we can see here in another clip the fire from another angle. And that thing be smoking. And moving on from that clip and on to our next one, we also get to see a fire growing in size right here as well. I gotta tell you, man, that ball bearing factory looks like it's gone.
I think honestly, when they hit ball bearings is what they put in like weapons that have like shrapnel that fly out of it, right? Like the ball bearings.
Ball bearings can be used in weapons like that, but ball bearings have a lot of other applications, especially in anything that rotates or moves. Ball bearings are incredibly important in those sorts of things. So turret rotation mechanisms, gun elevation and depression mechanisms, anything involving an aircraft, jet turbines use a good amount of ball bearings inside of them, as well as other kinds of components. There are a lot of things that use ball bearings, actually, that have military applications.
Interesting. Yeah, I wonder if the shrapnel and the ball bearings went flying out like a freaking like explosive or something when it got hit.
Man, I wonder, actually. That's a good question.
That's a big smoke. Apparently the ball bearing manufacturing must be very combustible.
Man, I got to tell you, man, that ball bearing, I guess they get a little bit of a ball bearing on it. But moving on from that and into our last clips, we also get to see the large fire from a close angle. Toasty.
I can tell by the door this is brilliant Russian car manufacturing on this thing.
The cheapest. Only the cheapest.
And also the absolute disregard by the Russians for what could be in those vapors and just standing near it like no big deal.
Hey, look at this. It's toxic smoke. And then they breathe it in.
It can't hurt you more than the pick of Lucky Strikes, blid.
This is actually this is actually more dangerous than weed. According to people, weed is perfectly harmless. In fact, it's actually good for you, believe it. I just got to be honest with y'all. I will impart some of my medical wisdom, just a little bit. People will not want to hear this, though. But inhaling smoke of any kind into your lungs is generally not going to be good for your health, okay? It doesn't matter if the smoke is coming from the tobacco leaf or a little bit of that weed. It's smoke, so it's probably hurting your lungs. Just putting that out there, it's probably not good for you. And and like, I just gotta say this, folks. I just gotta say this. I don't know what it is, but weed is like the new cigarettes. Like, cigarettes in the 50s are what weed is to people today. Like, people back in the day could be like, hey, folks, I think these cigarettes might be detrimental to your health by inhaling this smoke filled with nicotine and other kinds of dangerous chemicals. People are like, how dare you, you bastard? They're healthy. And then nowadays you can say, hey, folks, I don't really think inhaling weed smoke into your lungs is really healthy for you. It might cause medical complications. And then people are like, no, it's not. In fact, weed helps you. It's like, I don't know. Like yeah, tobacco and weed make you feel better. But at the same time, you're inhaling smoke into your lungs. And the general thing that you learn about house fires is that you want to get low to the floor so that you're not inhaling smoke. So, like igniting something and then inhaling the vapors, the smoke vapors, generally just seems to me it will eventually end up becoming unhealthy and will most likely coat your lungs with some kind of a filament. That's just my opinion. That seems to be like a basic kind of a thing. But anyways, moving on from that and into the next clip. And also, by the way, folks, I just got to say this. Just because you're doing it does not mean it has to be healthy. Like, if someone is smoking a cigarette, like, it's unhealthy. Like, they can still do it. It's a free country. Like, weed can be unhealthy for you, and you can still smoke it. And I just say I really don't care. I mean, all I like to know is that people are going to be like, yeah, it's unhealthy, but I like to do it anyways. Because, like, eating a McDonald's quarter pounder with cheese isn't exactly healthy, but I eat them. And I'm perfectly fine with saying, yeah, they're not really the greatest thing for my health. It's not a health food, but I eat them anyways. And I know, eventually the cholesterol is going to clog my arteries probably. I'm not going to lie to myself about that and say, actually, McDonald's is a health food. Like, no, I'm going to be honest with myself. Probably killing myself slowly by eating quarter pounders with cheese. But moving on from that, we did get to see some explosions in Kursk overnight, just literally about 2 or 3 hours ago. It's actually pretty loud.
I like the fact that he's have a camera pointing at a corner of a wall that's very blurry.
Dang. And that's the end of that clip right there, but it sounds like Kursk was getting hit pretty bad. Moving on from that and into our next clip, we also got to see some air defense in Kursk as well, right here. Just normal machine gun fire, the typical fare.
As you can see here, we're barely defending the Russian territory, but no worries, the Commissar has it under control.
And that's the end of the clip right there. And very interesting to see. And also, I saw someone say one more thing, man, because I keep seeing it, man. It's honestly, I gotta tell y'all, it's hilarious. It's like poking a nest of bees whenever anyone talks about weed, because there are so many people who militantly come out in defense of it, like no one else does on anything else. You can talk about alcohol or cigarettes, like everyone would be like, yeah, that's generally unhealthy for you. When you talk about weed, people come out of the woodwork saying that it's like it's a wonder thing, like it just helps you. Like, I gotta say, like this person said, honestly, that's probably like a defense mechanism for some people who are addicted. The best case against weed that I've ever seen is Hot Dog Man. Like, Hot Dog Man is the best case I've ever seen against weed. He has sat there and going, weed needs to be legal everywhere. Weed doesn't hurt you. And then he went to the hospital because he was suffering from weed addiction or something. And also, apparently, his lungs were coated with some filament and he wasn't getting oxygen in his blood or something. He probably was lying about most of that. But beyond that, he is the best argument that I've ever seen against weed. Like, just being entirely honest with y'all, I saw that guy. And he's probably like the most deadbeat person I've ever seen. He's a YouTuber, and I was like, you know what? He has a great argument to not ever smoke weed. Like that's just my honest take on it. People can try and defend it.
Honestly, man, I could care less. Like if it's legal where people live and people want to use marijuana or weed or whatever, and then I personally could care less. It's like, it's your life. Use it if you want. I would probably not use it. In fact, for me personally, I hate to even take Advil when I have to take it for a headache. I don't want to take any medication. Like if I can avoid all medication, I avoid everything. I try not to touch it all because every medication out there has some horrible side effect to it. Like even Advil, according to some doctors I've spoken to, hurts your liver even in the doses you're supposed to take it in, or whatever the acetaminophen or however you pronounce it. It's not good for you, but you take it. The risks are understood to be lower than the benefit at the time to get rid of the pain, so you take it anyway. But I try to avoid every medication, any type of thing that alters your mental state. I try to avoid that too. Alcohol, drugs, everything, because I mean, if you can handle life without taking it, then I would say don't take it.
I'll be honest as well, because I don't think people get this. I'm not a fan of it. I'm never going to do it, but I don't really think I should be stopping other people from doing it, because it's a free country. Y'all can do what y'all want. But I'm generally saying that I don't like it. Like, we don't have to agree on that. Y'all can do what you want. It's a free country. But I generally think that people ought to have a good understanding that it's probably not good for your health. Just like smoking a cigarette or drinking a large amount of alcohol is not good for your health as well. Smoking anything and inhaling smoke vapors is probably not good for your health. That just generally is my assumption on that. Doesn't mean that you should stop doing it. I'm not one of those people. Like, I'll just be honest with y'all. I'm not one of those people who say something sounds unhealthy, we now have to make it illegal. Like, I'm not one of those people. Like, I would go, that sounds unhealthy. Maybe the government should put a warning label on that. But beyond that, I don't really care. Like, it's just kind of y'all's life. You get to do what you do. I'm not doing it, but if y'all want to do it, fine by me. I just generally think that a lot of people ought to have an understanding that it's probably not going to be healthy for you, especially if you're smoking it. But anyways, moving on from that and into our next bits of news down in the area of the Kursk front line, we were able to see that a Russian pontoon ferry was destroyed today by American GBU-62 aerial bombs. We can see that little pontoon ferry bridge right there near Glishkovo, and that thing got iced. Oh, look at that.
Oh, dear. This landscape looks a little tough, too. I'm not going to lie.
Man, that landscape is looking busted, really. And that's the end of that clip right there, but very interesting to see, and good to note that the Ukrainians were able to knock it out. Meanwhile, down near Grafovka, it appears that the Russian Federation attempted an attack to uproot and push the Ukrainians out, and lost 60 conscripts and 5 trucks that were in the assault. We also got a clip of that as well, showing the entire assault column wiped out on the tree line right outside of their view. And we see here them
look,
talking
some
about
private messages. Is that Signal group chat? Or they're sending memes again.
Bro, they had a cat. Look at that. They had a little kitten.
This is the Russians talking in here?
I think so, yeah.
Man, like, this is why their strategies aren't very good. They're sharing cat pictures and stuff, and they're not talking about the war.
Bro, rip. But anyways, with that, we are going to be moving on from that little area in Belgorod and on down into our location unknowns. And moving on into that and into this news, we were able to see them dropping some glide bombs from the bottom of a MiG-29. Take a look at that. A very interesting thing right there. And I love to see it. We love to know that the Ukrainians are continuing to use those glide bombs, and hopefully they're making sure to make an impact. Moving on from that and on into our next clip, we also get to see the Russian casualty report. And I can already tell you, those Bobcat losses were fire.
Oh, the Bobcat losses are fire. We got 3 Bobcat skid steers today. I love to see that. I love to see it. But tell us more.
And I got to say that those losses were looking juicy today. We could see that lower troop losses are happening again, but still over 1,000, which is pretty good. 87 artillery pieces is the 5th highest daily loss of the war. 146 drones is ranks as the 25th highest, tied with March 24th of 2025. And 133 supply trucks is tied with February 6th of 2025 as the 26th highest loss day of the war. Nevertheless, moving on into the actual numbers themselves, we had 1,050 Russian soldiers wounded and killed over the past 24 hours, along with 13 APCs, 133 supply trucks, 9 main battle tanks, 87 artillery pieces, 146 drones, and 3 Bobcat skid steers. All in all, it was a pretty decent day, and it was good to see that the Russian Federation was continuing to take such significant losses. Moving on from that and into the front lines themselves, we got to see near the Seversk area, Russians with wheelbarrows. We call this the news segment, Wheelbarrow Nicks. And there's the wheelbarrow, and he flips it over. And then he flips it on top of himself, almost like some sort of a armor shell.
But he's kind of a wimp, so he couldn't really pull it over. Also, he's definitely not going to be able to get off the top of him either, like if he's that weak.
Oh, that won't matter too much because they hit the wheelbarrow anyways. And that's the end of the clip. But moving on from that and on into our next clip further down the line near Chasiv Yar, we also got to see the 427th destroying a Mista S, which I'm highly doubting this is a Mista S. It looks more like a Tulpan of a sort. Actually, this is a Gyansen S. That actually makes a lot more sense. And we can see here the drone lining itself up and making its run on the Gyeonsan. And boom, and shakalaka, they hit it, and it appears that there's some smoke coming off of it from the first hit. They hit it a second time, because it's even funnier the second time, and then they hit it a third time. And we can see them toasting down there, destroyed, is what they claim. And that's the end of that clip, but holy smokes, folks, that was an impressive one. Nevertheless, moving on from that and further on down the line into Chasiv Yar, once again, we have been able to see a Russian surrendering today to a Ukrainian drone. You can see him right there. He's surrendering, see? And he's just making a wander on out.
He's walking like he's going to show up to a shift at the chocolate factory.
Bro, he's working for Willy Wonka, the way he oompa loompa on out of here.
You lose. You get nothing, sir. Nothing.
Good day.
Good day to you, bastard.
Mr. Wonka, I want to give you this everlasting gobstopper. Why, Charlie, you did it! You did it! What did I do? You did it, Charlie! You proved that you can run the chocolate factory! Now you will be the one responsible for the 9 acts of manslaughter in this factory. It will be you, Charlie, not me! Like, but anyways.
Man, he just passed the corporate buck.
No, Charlie gonna get put on trial for the deaths of 9 children in the chocolate factory that happened right before. Honestly, man, that movie was kind of messed up, man. There was like 9 traumatic deaths before he gets to the end, and then he's just like, "You lose." Just like, bro, I would like this kid went through more than like most people did in Nam, dude. And you're just gonna do him like that? It's like you screwed this kid over. Like now he's got endless trauma, and then you expect him to hand over the everlasting gobstopper too. What an ass Willy Wonka was, honestly. That guy was just an absolute douche. Anyways, moving on from that, we do have a question for all of you. Russia has massively escalated attacks on civilians in Ukraine in recent days, and why is Russia risking a U.S. response? And a lot of people are saying it's because Russia doesn't fear a U.S. response, and some others are saying that Russia is testing the boundaries. But Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking as well?
So we got a whopper. We got 72% that said Russia does not fear a U.S. response, while 21% said Russia is testing the boundaries, and 3% said Russia is getting revenge for the Kursk invasion. And I would say, honestly, I'm actually with the 21%. Russia is testing the boundaries because at some point, the U.S. will have to acknowledge it if it gets too bad. And right now, Russia is definitely pushing the envelope right now. They're launching unprecedented attacks on civilians, like worse than ever. And we've seen them tonight. We saw them last night. We saw them the night prior to that. And it seems like they're getting worse every single day. So I think they're trying to see how far can they go without the U.S. actually putting their foot down. And so far, the U.S. really hasn't put their foot down. So I think they're going to keep going until that happens. So I'm waiting and relying that good heads will prevail here and eventually put their foot down on the Russians and put sanctions on them if they keep doing this. Because if they don't, I fear that Russia is going to keep going deeper and deeper with it until a lot of civilians are casualties in this war, which shouldn't be in the first place. But I'm with the 21%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I'm with the 21% as well. I believe that the Russian Federation is just testing boundaries at this point and seeing how far they can push the envelope before they pretty much cross the line at this point. I think they're so annoyed with the United States, they're honestly trying to break down the diplomatic negotiations because they really don't want to even get into them at this point. But moving on from that and out of that news, it's time for us to move on down to Tourette's, where we were able to hear the Ukrainian forces were continuing to make more ground inside of the city. Meanwhile, we have also been able to hear of more significant developments near Pokrovsk, because the Ukrainians have also made more ground near Shevchenko, and we also get to see a Russian on crutches out there on the front lines. There he is. That guy is actually on the front lines in crutches. That's not combat condition.
Where's this guy even going? Like he's going to the barbed wire.
He apparently wants to crawl in the barbed wire.
Interesting. Is he trying to surrender or something?
I don't really know, actually. I have no clue what he's doing. Oh,
dude, if I was him, I would be surrendering 100%.
Man, he was moving fast at the end. I would honestly surrender at that point, man. If you're being forced to fight while crippled, I mean, what are you really fighting for at that point? But moving on out of that area and on into Dnipro, we did also get to hear that Dnipro was hit pretty badly. So far, unfortunately, there has been one death reported from the attacks inside of Dnipro of a civilian, but we have not heard of any other casualty reports so far. But nevertheless, that is the news that we had from Dnipro. And moving on out of that and on up into the area of Kyiv, we do have the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky for this very day of the war. So, here we go. There we go. I had to make sure we had the right one. Without further ado, here is the speech. Speech!
Здоров'я, шановні українці, українки. Щойно була доповідь міністра оборони Умєрова про комунікацію і спільну роботу з нашими партнерами в Європі. Будуть нові пакети підтримки. Також ми готуємо нову безпекову архітектуру, всі конкретні деталі того, як може функціонувати безпековий контингент партнерів в Україні. Ми зі свого боку все зробимо, щоб політичне рішення про контингент максимально швидко виконувалось. І саме тоді, коли для цього буде час. Сьогодні ж детально ми обговорили з дипломатами найближчі наші тижні, можливі зустрічі тут, в Європі, роботу з Америкою, а також відносини з іншими державами. З усіма державами, які достатньо сильні, щоб реально вплинути на дипломатію. В усіх частинах світу має бути однаково зрозуміло, що причина цієї війни тільки в Росії. Саме там, в Москві, в Кремлі, сидить причина, чому досі немає навіть припинення вогню. Не те, що чогось більшого. Вже 36 днів пропозиція Америки повністю та безумовно припинити удари у небі, на морі та на землі. Україна одразу прийняла цю пропозицію більш ніж місяць тому. Росія ігнорує її досі. І досі не відчуває наслідків. І саме в цьому ключова проблема. Говорив сьогодні з президентом Фінляндії, зокрема і про це, про дипломатію, яка гальмує через те, що на Росію недостатньо тиску. Говорили також про відносини з Америкою. Ми погодили наші спільні меседжі, наші спільні кроки, наші спільні позиції. Це важливо, що Україна та майже всі ми в Європі маємо об'єднану позицію щодо багатьох безпекових питань. Я дякую Фінляндії за підтримку. Хороші результати в урядової команди України, яка працює з американською стороною по угоді про економічне партнерство. Перша віце-прем'єр-міністр Свириденко доповідала сьогодні про це. Базові юридичні речі майже доопрацьовані, і далі, якщо все буде рухатись так само швидко та конструктивно, угода дасть економічні результати обом нашим країнам – і Україні, і Америці. І ще одне. Сьогодні я відзначив державними нагородами наших працівників оборонної промисловості. Їхній професійний день був 13 квітня, коли Росія ударила балістикою по Сумах. Нам є чим відповідати на такі удари, і ми не залишимо просто у спокої на цій землі сволоту, яка вбиває наших людей. Ми маємо на це повне право. Це абсолютно справедливо – відповідати вбивцям так, як вони заслуговують. Росія повинна змиритись з думкою про невідворотність сили України, і справжній надійний мир може бути досягнутий саме тоді, коли реальність змусить Росію змиритись з нашими можливостями. Наші дрони, українські ракети, наша артилерія, українські снаряди, наша техніка – все, що виробляє Україна, захищатиме Україну, життя наших людей, нашу державу. Я дякую всім вже більш ніж 300 тисячам українців, які працюють на наших оборонних підприємствах тут, в нашій державі, заради української сили. Пишаюся нашими людьми. Слава Україні!
And Ram
Slava.
And that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 1,148 of the war. And that wraps up our news segment just a little bit over time. And I got to thank all of y'all so much for being here so far. Of course, make sure to stick around. We're moving on to the next segment where we get to talk to each and every single one of y'all. And it is an incredibly fun segment, that I will have to tell y'all. Nevertheless, I do thank y'all all so much for being here so far. And we cannot wait to be able to chit-chat with all of y'all for the remainder of the stream about anything and everything. Literally anything and everything. It's a open season for what we can talk about with all of y'all, and we can't wait. We are looking forward to it. And so, with that, Matthew, please take it away.
All right, so it is now time for the final question segment of the night, and also our final poll question of the night. And this question says, what is your assessment of the condition of the Ukraine-Russia war at this point? 46% said Ukraine is winning, meaning they're taking ground, while 42% said it's a stalemate or a zero-sum game, and 6% said Russia is winning, meaning that Russia is taking ground. And if I'm being totally honest here, I'm going to be sort of like very, very realistic on this one. It generally is a stalemate. It's a zero-sum game at the moment. Ukraine is taking ground in some places. Like, for example, they're taking ground inside of Belgorod, that region right now of mainland Russia. And also they're holding their ground along the entire front line. But at the same time, Russia is taking a small village here and there, which sort of like balances it out to pretty much be a stalemate. So while I would love to say Ukraine is taking ground, I'm generally going to say it's generally a stalemate on the front right now, which is to be expected because, once again, Russia's throwing everything they have in the kitchen sink at Ukraine, and Ukraine is holding up quite well, even in the midst of this chaos about the future of their support from foreign countries. So they're doing good, but it is a stalemate. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to actually disagree with you. I do believe that the war in Ukraine largely appears to be a stalemate. And while the Ukrainians are gaining some ground, it does appear that at the exact same time, the Russians are able to gain a little bit of ground elsewhere, pretty much balancing the entire thing out and creating a zero-sum gain. While some of the advances that the Ukrainians are making that we're mentioning do look fairly sizable, we do have to remember that these are incredibly minute, both on the Russian side and the Ukrainian side in terms of scale, and are nowhere close to the offensive gains that were achieved by either side during the entirety of 2022 and half of the earlier part of 2023. So I would generally have to say that while the Ukrainians are winning the battles on the ground right now, the amount of gains being made are so small, it largely still does remain a stalemate. And so I hope that does address that fairly well. Actually, Matthew, I think that sounded very close to what you were saying.
You actually agree with me, actually. You actually didn't disagree with me.
I was
agreed wholeheartedly.
I was reading the chat, and I thought I heard you say something else, and I was like, I actually disagree with you. And I was trying to put out my point, and then I was like, actually, I started thinking about it more and more. I was like, I actually think that I'm agreeing with you pretty much whole on. So Matthew and me are actually on the same page, although I technically disagreed with him. But hey, that's something interesting to note. But y'all know something interesting that is also to note, something else that's quite interesting to note, is that we have a massive question segment right now, and we have a pretty good amount of super chats, but it's not a lot, and that allows us room to rabbit hole. And what will we rabbit hole on tonight? We're not going to do it right now, but I'm just going to start throwing the option out there. What are we going to rabbit hole? Are we going to rabbit hole on trains, motorcycles, cars, some random topic in history, maybe GTA? What are we going to rabbit hole on tonight, folks?
Man, we've got a ton of live chat questions tonight. We could rabbit hole on all 18 of the live chat questions if we get through the super chats.
Oh, dang. And how many super chats do we have right now?
Right now we have I would say about 12 to go.
Oh, that's not that many. We can actually knock those out and get on into those live chats. But we will see what we're rabbit holing about. I see a lot of different ideas for what we'll rabbit hole on. Actually, a lot of people saying trains. It looks like people are back in the business of trains for a little while. But motorcycles will probably be back in vogue here in a while. But anyways, Matthew, what do we got for our first live chat of this question segment?
All right, so our first super chat is going to go to Purple Gerbil, who's, of course, a channel legend, a longtime staple of the channel, and is always supporting the channel very much all the time. And thank you very much, Purple Gerbil, for being so consistent with that support and helping keep us running. And tonight with that $20 support. And they said, please take a live chat, LSA, chin up, and elbows up.
Hey, thank you so much for your support, Purple Gerbil, and thank you for being one of the first super chats to come through tonight, and thank you so much for helping this channel to keep on running. Folks like you make this thing possible day in and day out, and I cannot thank you enough for continuing to make this channel possible with every single passing day. You are an old guard and a channel legend, and we are going to make sure to keep our chin up and our elbows up as we continue to keep this thing rolling, and we will make sure to get a live chat in your honor. And so what do we got, Matthew, in honor of Purple Gerbil?
All right, so that live chat question goes to Rob McGuffin, who said, why wouldn't the U.S. just stop all trade to the U.S.? Let's see here.
The U.S. stop all trade to the U.S.?
Yeah, that I think that was a typo there they put in. I think they meant to say, why wouldn't China just stop all trade to the U.S., call some of the debt China owns of the U.S.?
That's because they're in the business of making money. And the Chinese would like to rectify the situation where they can continue to make money instead of just losing all of their money. That's kind of what they're doing right now, in a way, is that they're trying to strong arm the United States and just letting the trade flow again so that way they can keep making money. Everyone is in the business of making money. So generally, their actions right now are motivated in trying to rekindle this monetary stream and continue to make some money off of it. That's really what they're trying to do. So that would be my best explanation. But Matthew, do you have an explanation that may be as good or better than mine? Because I feel like mine was a little bit more simplistic on that one.
So the question being, why shouldn't China just stop all trade to the United States? Generally, I would have to say exactly what you said. China is in the business of making money, and they were making a hell of a lot of money off of sending all those cheap goods to the United States. Because even though they're selling them at extremely low prices to the United States, their labor costs and all their other material costs are much, much more drastically reduced than what they'd be in the United States. So they're still making fantastic margins and also making a ton of tax revenue and also export fees by sending all that stuff domestic or internationally to the United States. So that's just simple economics. They're just trying to make a ton of money, and they've been doing it for a long time. But it looks like that is coming to an abrupt stop because the U.S. is their largest trading partner, to my knowledge, and now it's coming to a pretty quick halt. So they're not going to make so much more money anymore. And also that's going to stagnate their GDP tremendously. So yeah, I would say primarily because they want to make some cash.
And so I hope that does address that live chat well. And a big thanks to Purple Gerbil once again for sponsoring that live chat and helping us to keep this thing running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to be here right now and making this thing a reality. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one. Also, by the way, let's see here. Brendan Quinn, he brought up an interesting point. He said the United States is going to be the most hurt by the tariffs. And tell me, Brendan, why do you think that is? Because at first glance, I would say it's going to hurt them pretty much equally. It's going to hurt us slightly more, but not significantly more than what China's going through. Because remember, they got to find a new market for all those goods. It does them no good in China to have all that manufacturing base ready to go and ready to manufacture large mass quantities if they have nowhere to sell it. Now they're sitting with a ton of equipment that they're not going to use because their quantity of goods that they're having to produce to sell to the United States is going to be drastically lowered. And that's already while we're seeing major Chinese e-commerce companies like Temu and also some other ones. I can't remember their name. They're already drastically cutting their advertising budgets here in the United States because they know that the goods aren't going to be selling like they were because the profit margin simply isn't there. So, we're being hurt because we're not getting the goods. But at the same time, though, we have to find another way to source those goods because China can't be the end-all solution to getting goods. We have to find other ways to source them. And while I don't think that bringing all the manufacturing back to the United States is a realistic goal, we have to find some other solution because China is an adversary, and this is a problem that should have been dealt with ages ago. I'm just hoping that it is dealt with in a sensible way. Now, but Enforcer, what do you think?
I would largely have to agree with Matthew on that one. It's going to hurt the United States a good bit. Well, not a good bit. It's going to hurt the United States for now, not to an extreme amount, and it's not going to be marginal. It's going to be kind of down the middle. But things are going to start shifting because, like what's Apple going to do? Apple's going to go, oh no, we're going to keep our manufacturing in China where there's an insanely high amount of tariffs instead of just moving them to India where the manufacturing would already be cheaper. And not only that, there isn't any extremely high tariffs. That wouldn't really make a lot of sense, just on Apple's perspective, much less for any other company. So all of those companies are going to start shifting out of China and into other countries that are globally competitive, like India, Vietnam, and Mexico. But I also have to say, like Matthew's saying, bringing manufacturing to the United States is not really possible for most companies. It just isn't. Like, once you move past being an industrialized country and you become a post-industrial country, it's really impossible to go backwards. You really can only go forwards. So that would largely be what I'd have to say on that. That's an incredibly long explanation as to why I'm just not getting into that right now. Not because like I don't respect what you're saying. It's just that it's incredibly long, and to be honest, my throat still hurts from being sick with the sore throat, and so I don't want to just go on and on and on about how that works. But anyways,
Well, my brain still hurts. My throat doesn't hurt. My brain still hurts about it, to be honest with you. I'll be straight up honest. Some people are blaming the current president for this problem with China. This is a problem that is on the backs of the last 3 or 4 presidents that we've had. This is a problem that everybody's been kicking down the road, kind of like, for example, the Iran problem. We've been kicking that one down the road too, and they're all guilty of kicking it down the road. It's not one single person's fault. Now, obviously, if you have grievances with the current guy about other chaotic aspects of foreign policy, I can understand completely where you're coming from. But on the China aspect, someone eventually had to actually put their foot down and deal with it. I don't necessarily agree with the exact methods that are being used here to deal with it, but it is being dealt with now, and I guess the buck is stopping here finally. But we're gonna pay a pretty strong price for stopping the buck right now. But it was coming inevitably. Like, it wasn't something we're going to be able to put off forever.
That's true. I would agree with that. Another thing, I see some people. Let's see here. Some people are, Uncle Tim said pipe dream, silly to bring back shoe manufacturing, etc. Heavy industry is different story, especially shipbuilding. Shipbuilding is actually something I'd have to agree with. It's something that needs to return to the United States. It's just that there's a problem with that, and the problem is the cost of labor. And a lot of companies are always going to look for the cheapest thing. And considering that the world is a global economy at this point, and there's no way to reverse that. Like, people can hate that all they want. It's happened. It's going to be here to stay. It's really hard to bring it back. And I would agree, it's a strategically important thing for the United States to have major shipbuilders. But the problem is that American labor is so much more expensive than that of any other country. It really makes it hard for there to be large shipbuilders in America that succeed. That's why so many shipbuilders beyond the defense industry shipbuilders have pretty much passed away and died. I think there's one, the English shipbuilding company here in Pascagoula, that still manufactures ships. Right here in this shipbuilders, but I think once again they are largely sustained entirely by defense contracts these days, and not any commercial contracts. You can actually see a Zumwalt down here in Pascagoula at the Ingalls Yard, but beyond that, Mobile, Alabama actually used to be a major shipbuilder itself, but as the decades went on, it's greatly decreased in its ability to conduct shipbuilding efforts, and once again, most of its naval actions, if shipbuilding, are largely conducted for the Navy. For example, the English shipyard, well, not the English shipyard, the Alstom Mobile shipyard builds Independence-class littoral combat ships for the Navy, but there really isn't a lot of domestic ship manufacturing for these reasons beyond military shipbuilding, because companies, especially those who operate container ships and bulk cargo vessels, they just find it more advantageous to purchase their ships from the cheapest producers, and those cheapest producers are going to be overseas where the labor is considerably cheaper. So that's kind of one of the main issues, is that if we want to be competitive in shipbuilding, we would either have to subsidize those shipbuilders a great deal, meaning that burden largely is extended to the taxpayer, or we have to pretty much just sweep away everything that has been achieved in labor laws for the shipbuilders here, and pretty much make it to where they're earning pennies, and then no one will want to work as a shipbuilder in America because there's a lot better jobs out there. So that's kind of the issue that we would run into there. You pretty much just have to force yourself into subsidizing those shipbuilders to keep them going. Or
can you zoom back into the Mobile shipyard, by the way? Like, zoom back down to that image you just had a moment ago.
Yeah, sure.
Zoom on in.
Which part? South, center, or north?
The bottom, the south. Now, I'm not an expert in shipbuilding, but could they lower their cost a little bit in building these ships if they didn't build them right in the middle of the Wonka Chocolate River? Could they lower their cost that way?
Technically, they could, but the Wonka Chocolate River is an essential part of the Alabama experience.
Yeah, like, honestly, like, they if they weren't dumping all this chocolate here, they could probably lower the cost. Honestly, though, like, all jokes aside, that water looks nasty as hell from that. Honestly, it kind of looks nasty in the satellite picture right here as well.
Huh. Man, honestly, this is a whole new view of Mobile. Look at McDuffel Island, dude. Jesus.
Oh, geez, man. This looks like, honestly, like it looks bad. I'm not gonna lie.
Industrial hell. And there's the bulk cargo vessels, the dry bulk vessels that carry the coal right there. Man, it's actually kind of wild to see McDuffel Island. McDuffel Island is like hell on earth to me. But we actually have a pretty sizable little container port here in Alabama. It's not as big as others like Charleston, and the reality is that we are a backwater port in terms of container traffic these days. But it is pretty cool to see a container ship that size here in Mobile. That's actually pretty neat.
Yeah, it's kind of neat. I like how multicolored it is. It's very colorful looking in a very drab looking area of the country, to be honest. So it looks pretty nice, at least from the air. From the ground, it doesn't look so nice, but it looks good from here.
Yeah, man. Also, another thing, man. Yeah, you can really tell that this is like a minor sized container port because there's no direct rail access to load the containers onto trains at this port whatsoever. It's all transported out by truck. So this appears to be like in destination deliveries into Alabama for 18-wheelers to take them to their final destination somewhere in the state or in the surrounding area. I think Gulfport has a little port, but it is tiny. Like Gulfport's port is insane. Yeah, this is Gulfport's port. Look at that, dude. The traffic coming through this thing is non-existent. There's like nothing here.
Man, I think the main thing that's delivered here is the Chiquita banana shipments. Honestly, I think that's the pretty much the only thing that gets delivered here. It feels like.
Let's see. Let's drop down in the street view. Yeah, Dole and Chiquita.
Dole. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, and you can see the little rail line that runs in here. Serviced a little bit. It's actually still serviced by rail. And let me see if I can show y'all some of the rail cars. They should be in here somewhere. Let's see. Oh dang, maybe they cut off rail service because they've got semi-trailers on the tracks everywhere. So it looks like maybe Kansas City Southern stopped serving this terminal. That would be wild if that is the case. Oh wait, no. There's rail cars here. There's actual. Okay, so it's still being served. That's weird though, man. Those are like normal box cars. What are like? I don't know what they would be loading up here, and they also have some hoppers too. That is weird, honestly. I don't know what they're doing here at Gulfport. But yeah, these are like our little ports here in the south. And then I forgot to mention, there is a larger refinery here at Pascagoula, which is also a major port of its own. And they have a little coal loading station here, too, for bulk vessels, again. But this is a fairly large refinery, sort of an installation, that ships can be loaded with fuel and then go out there into the greater Gulf. Let me see here, Matthew. New Orleans used to be a major port back before containerization. I don't think they are now because no one wants to take the long, slow voyage up the Mississippi to New Orleans. And it looks like that is the case, but there are a load of river barges over here just sitting on the side of the river.
Yeah, that's true. A lot of people just want to go right out to the Gulf of America.
Oh yeah, I forgot it's called that. I keep calling it the Gulf of Mexico. Let's see. What does this look like down here, man? Man,
it looks like it could be kind of rough. Is there a street view?
Have you ever seen, Matthew, like the bayou decay like from satellite? Like how badly it is?
No.
Let's see. Louisiana bayou decay map. Let me see if I can show you this. So all that area in blue once was actual bayou, like swampy bayou, and it's all gone. That whole area in blue, it's mostly gone at this point.
Give me a street view of it down there on the map. Like, you go back to the thing and give the street view. Well, right here. Venice. Boy. They call it Venice.
They call it Venice, but this sure as hell ain't Venice in Italy. But this is what it looks like down here.
Wait. Oh, man. I'll be honest with you. Out of all the different, like, biomes you could live in or the environment you could live in America, this one is probably my least favorite, honestly. The second least favorite would probably be the desert, like Arizona, like type areas and stuff like that. But man, I just do not like the Louisiana bayous and stuff like that. It just feels so like wet and nasty, like it, especially down here, man. Shoot, this is hardcore bayou down here.
Man, there's just something about the bayou, really. Like I can't really put my foot on it. Oh, look, the intracoastal waterways right there too. The big ditch that FDR built. But let's see here. I want to see if we can actually show you like the bayou. Here we go. This would be a good look. Yeah, the swamp.
Shoo-wee. This is now for some reason this hits different in Louisiana than the like Everglades in Florida. The Everglades looks and for some reason gives me like the impression it feels cleaner or something. Not that it necessarily is, but the Louisiana like bayou swamp thing kind of gives me like the impression that's kind of like dirty and nasty for some reason.
Man, it's like it's a legit swamp. Like the Everglades and the bayou are pretty much similar to each other in that they are true swamps and quite significant ones at that. But the shame of it is that while this is hideous, it actually is ecologically important to the state of Louisiana, the local wildlife, and also the economy of the state, and it is disappearing fast. Most of these areas here, like these lakes, actually used to have bayou inside of them. Like this map here, hopefully it pulls it up and we can actually get a larger view of it. All of this blue area is land loss. All of that's gone now.
All that land lost.
Yeah, so the areas in green, like the actual areas that are not blue, that's the land that's left. But this is all of the bayou that's been lost from 1932 up to the present day in will be lost by 2050.
Jeez, man. And also I see people saying that it's the Everglades is cleaner because it's further from the filthy Mississippi. The Mississippi River is nasty.
Yuck.
Nasty.
Yeah.
It is so nasty. And also the currents in the Mississippi. When I actually saw that in person, I was shocked. I was like, wow, the currents in the Mississippi are powerful, like super powerful. Which was shocking to me. I didn't expect that. But in person, when I finally saw it, when I crossed the Mississippi, going to Texas one time, I was like, that's shocking. Like I've never like swam in a river like that, but it would seem like if you got in there and tried to swim, you would get swept away quick.
It actually is a pretty fast-moving river. That's actually something that's really interesting, Matthew, is that in the earlier days, this is actually what spurned a lot of the railroad development in this area, is that it's really easy to get down the Mississippi River, but it's tough to get back up it because of that current.
I believe it.
Yeah, so most of the time what they would do, this is like the crazy cool thing about like the history of the Mississippi, is that back before steam power became a thing, there were two ways that people would move cargo on the Mississippi. They would build barges, and they would just load the cargo on, and they pretty much float the barge down the whole river to New Orleans to trade. And then once they got there, they would unload the cargo, and then they just disassemble the barge, nail by nail, board by board, and then they'd sell off the nails and the boards to build the buildings in New Orleans. There was also another thing that you could do, but it was a lot more expensive. You could actually sail a boat down the Mississippi River to New Orleans, unload the boat, sail the goods, but then you would have to hire a crew of mules to tie to your vessel and then literally pull it from the shore all the way back up the Mississippi River. A lot of people didn't do that because that was very expensive to do. Steam power
It seemed like they would probably just like kayak back up the thing. Like it seemed like it'd be a lot cheaper.
Yeah, it would have been cheaper, but not a lot of cargo to carry that way. So when steamboats became a thing, that was the big way to travel because you could actually go up and down the river and it didn't really matter the current. But then the big thing became the railroads. But still, the Mississippi River is a vital trade corridor to this day. It's just that the thing is mired with like filth. It just looks terrible. I'll show you all the river. It's like Willy Wonka River. There it is.
Hey, this is where I crossed right here, the Vicksburg Bridge.
Oh, you went through Vicksburg on your failed venture to Austin?
Yeah. I actually went through every time I've gone to Texas, I've gone through Vicksburg over this bridge right here. I go through. Let's see, zoom out a little bit. I can tell you the route that I take. It's
you take I-20 like all the way, right?
Yeah, I hit Tuscaloosa, Meridian, then Jackson, Vicksburg, then I hit Monroe, Louisiana, Shreveport, then Tyler and Dallas.
Yeah, I was about to say, I was like, Interstate 20, that's just like that's the answer. It's like Interstate 20 the whole way. Yeah, straight shot. Man, that's one cool thing about the interstate, man, is that you can just figure out the number you need to get on, and then you just go straight, and usually you will end up hitting all of the major cities along the way, which is pretty cool. But beyond that, one thing that's interesting to me, man, is that it's right outside of Vicksburg. Oh, Vicksburg. Oh. Rough city. On the Yazoo River. Of all places. Is that a cruise ship?
Can't tell if that's a cruise ship. It's pretty damn old.
Man. Vicksburg is a rough city, folks. We went there before. Everything in Mississippi is rough. It's even rougher than Alabama, which is actually pretty tough to do. But Vicksburg was a rough place. But
Oh,
beyond,
Interstate 20, man. I'm not dogging on y'all if y'all live like anywhere like along Interstate 20. Interstate 20 is not like, good for scenery. Like, I'll be honest with you, that is a tough drive from Birmingham to Dallas on the Interstate 20. That is a very unscenic drive. And in fact, it's kind of depressing, actually, to me. It's just kind of bleak, and you feel like you're driving through very tough areas. Also, does that say flood warning next to the interstate? Am I seeing that properly?
yeah, dude, it's the Mississippi River. Floodplains easily happen all over the Mississippi, everywhere, especially this time of year.
Does the interstate flood?
I don't think so. But the floodplain's massive. Let's go pull it up. Let's see here. The let me just go type in a Mississippi floodplain. There we go. So this is the Mississippi alluvial plain. And these areas here are the giant floodplains of the Mississippi. So at some points of the year, usually during the spring, some of those entire areas can be completely submerged in water because of the floodplains of the Mississippi and its tributaries in this region.
Interesting. Yeah, I would based on what I drove through, it would look like the interstate was low enough to be flooded. So that's kind of interesting.
So let me see if I can show you the actual water of the floodplains in some places. Oh yeah, like right here. This is the Mississippi River before the floodplains occur, and this is the Mississippi River during a floodplain.
Oh wow, that's quite bad.
Yeah, the Army Corps of Engineers has tried valiantly to try and control the Mississippi River. It's proven to be pretty much an impossible challenge for the most part. But they have created a system of locks and dams further south in Louisiana. I think near the Red River Landing, if I'm right. Oh, no, it's actually right up here, yeah. The low sill control structures to be able to control the combination of the Red River and the Mississippi River, so that way these floodplains don't just end up going insane and destroying the entire area. But it's a very interesting kind of a thing. But anyways, with that, I hope we went on and on and on about the Mississippi River quite well, because it sure is an interesting thing, actually. But anyways, with that, I thank you once again for the support and help this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that well, and I hope that addresses everything else you didn't want to know well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat goes to Zyper Sniper 1, who's a longtime channel legend, by the way. And thank you very much, Zyper, for that $20 support and also helping to keep the channel running. We appreciate that very much. And as Zyper said, a coffee fund for the enforcers. And if Iran gets nukes and are about to test them, then they might test it by actually nuking someone.
And I thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And that is an interesting idea. I thank you for the coffee fund, by the way, although I don't really drink coffee anymore. But I do thank you greatly for that, though. I still appreciate that. But as far as testing a nuke on someone else, pretty tough because you're not guaranteed it will work. So if you fire a nuke at someone and it was clearly a nuke and you tried to nuke them and it failed, then you opened up yourself into being counter nuked and you didn't even get to nuke the guy you were trying to nuke in the first place. They'll probably test it in an isolated clinical environment so that way they can make sure the thing works, meaning that the first nuclear test that they'll do is most likely, highly likely going to be in Iran. Because not even the United States in World War II tested our first nuclear bomb by dropping it on Japan. We tested our first one in July of 1945, and then we dropped the real atomic bombs in August of 1945, not that long after the first successful test. So with that, I hope that does address that well, and I thank you so much once again for support. But it's possible, especially with an irrational, radical sort of a government like Iran. But I still think it will be highly unlikely, and they'll probably go with a conventional nuclear testing method. But still, huge thanks to you so much once again, Zyper Sniper, a channel legend and an old guard who's been here for an incredibly long time. I gotta thank you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so jumping into our next super chat, this one goes to John Brewer, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, John, as well, for that $20 support. He said, take a question, please.
And thank you so much for the support. And we will make sure to take a question in your honor. And so what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so this live chat question goes to Little Bear, who says, are those expensive US B-2 bombers still sitting in the salt air?
Yes, they are still sitting in Diego Garcia in the salty air with a nice the Indian Ocean sunlight beaming down upon them. And so the answer to that is yes. And so I hope that does address that well. I thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on running, sponsoring our live chat. And I also saw someone say, does the Mississippi River have flood walls? In some places they do, but that's only near to key areas like Baton Rouge. Baton Rouge does have flood walls along some areas of the Mississippi River, specifically towards the inner part of the city, around right here, but not really many of them. The Mississippi River is such a large and powerful river, it really is tough to control, actually. And we've seen multiple times that the Mississippi River carves its own path. You can actually see that quite clearly with the borders between Mississippi, Arkansas, and Louisiana, because in some places you can see, like, for example, let's find a good example. Right here, you can actually see that the Mississippi River takes an S-bend right here through the area. But the original border that was created between the state of Mississippi, Arkansas, and Louisiana was on the original path of the Mississippi. And when this part of the border was made, the Mississippi River actually didn't take this gradual S-hook. It actually went and took a complete horseshoe bend into this area right here on this dotted line, and then right back out, and then back onto its original path out here. The Mississippi River is so powerful, it actually makes its own path through the land, and kind of whips and willows, kind of like a snake, honestly, throughout the years. So it's pretty hard to build the flood walls, because when you could build one today, and then the river could be so strong that it literally just works its way around it and creates a whole new bend in the river by the next few years. So generally, you don't really see a lot of flood walls around the majority of the Mississippi River, unless if it's near to a populated urban area for an incredibly small stretch. But still, I hope that does address that well. Honestly, the Mississippi River, while a hideous, murky brown river, it's actually an impressive and really powerful force in nature. Something that has had a lot of history in the United States, actually, too. But beyond that, I won't bore y'all with river talk. But the Mississippi River truly is a massive and powerful river. It's I believe it's the largest, most powerful river in the United States. The only one that comes close is the Missouri River that runs through Missouri. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. And also, Matthew, have you ever seen the Columbia River?
I believe I have, yeah.
The Columbia River near Portland, Oregon?
Yeah, I have seen that.
Man, I gotta show it to you here, man, because it honestly was pretty impressive, man. Because I was, I drove down to Vancouver, Washington, and so I was on the interstate about around Kamala, but I was around there in that area, and I think there was like a hill or something around here where you could actually see the river. There wasn't this area, but this is what the interstates looked like. Pretty nice, actually, pretty nice. But let's see here. I gotta see if I can find that area where you. Oh, this was a cool area. This was a cool area. Yeah, this is a cool area. Yeah. Hopefully it's like the summertime when they took this. No, it was the damn winter. But you can see the river out there. You can see the ships going up and down. And I saw this building here, man. No joke. And when I looked at the building, the Coast Starlight, like the whole train passed right in front of it.
Oh, that is so cool.
That was so cool. That was so neat. Man, I'm so real. But anyways.
Also, by the way, before we move on to our next question, go to your Discord and click on that White House article right there I just sent you. I want to show y'all something that was an interesting statement that was made today by the White House Director for Science and Technology. He made a pretty damn bold claim today that the U.S. possesses technology that can manipulate time and space. And he actually said that. It's not a conspiracy theory. So scroll on down here in this article. Keep going down. Yeah, keep going. Right here. Right there in the middle. It says, our technologies permit us to manipulate time and space. And this was in the context of speaking about the technological advancements the U.S. has made, and we've been stagnant intentionally over time. So I'm not sure what he meant by that. I mean, it's pretty straightforward what he meant by it, but it's like, what technology is he referring to that we apparently possess that we're not aware of? Because this is the actual director for the science and technology of the White House. Like, this is not just like a nut, like speaking off the top of his head. This is actually them saying that. That's kind of wild.
Oh, that's interesting. I don't know what that means, because it's like, if you have that ability, it's like, what the hell does that mean? It's like, Honestly, man, this could be the ramblings of a crazy man. It's like, you never know. Because it's like, let's see, has been one of increasing the capacities of America's workers, of extending human abilities so that more people can do more. No, it's actually the same amount of people can do more. That's what we've been doing. It's not more people can do more. It's the same amount of people augmented with technology can do more. But and more and more meaningful work. But
They're adding some politics in here.
they added some politics. I thought it was just gonna be like a generally like an optimistic statement, but then it moves straight into political commentary. But we can build in new ways that let us do more with less, or we can borrow from the future.
Oh, I know. They're talking about the immigrant teleporter. They haven't released that to the public yet.
It teleports them straight into like the crop fields of California and then right back out, right? Like it's something like that.
Man, I don't know, but apparently they're speaking about teleportation or something.
What the hell
honestly,
are they talking? This honestly sounds stupid.
Honestly, the more you read about it, I'm like, maybe they could be a nut. I don't know. Like when you see someone come out of the White House, you want to assume it's something that's probably credible because you would assume that the people they're getting for experts are probably qualified. I don't know anything about the guy that's saying this. By the way, he could be credible. I don't know. But it seems like I don't know.
Like I gotta tell y'all, the word soup stuff just it really irks me. Like this administration isn't just entirely guilty of it. The last one does this as well, and the one before it. Like nobody says anything anymore, Matthew, in like clear terms. Like, one, we have decided that computers are a way forward. Like, no, it's always just first we have to make smart choices, then we have to make right choices, then we have to make easy choices. It's like, what does that really mean? Like, that means nothing. Like, that's just cool sounding talk. It doesn't even tell us what's really going to be going on. Let's see.
Also, by the way, did y'all realize something else? When the stock market crash happened and the Dow went from like 46,000 or 47,000 points down to like 38, now it's rebounded to 39. All of a sudden, all that AI talk sort of disappeared. Did anybody else notice that?
Yeah, I did notice that the AI talk just kind of just disappeared overnight.
Yeah, it's like, and also the AI companies were running on a lot of hype. Like that was the whole thing. Like some people were blaming the AI revolution for the reason why the stock market sort of entered a bit of a bubble. And some people were saying, like, for example, NVIDIA, which is a huge manufacturer of GPUs, graphics processing units, which what AI runs on generally, because it's parallel processing or something like that. I don't know. I'm not an expert in it. But generally speaking, all those companies were being fueled to these massive record stock prices because of the hype behind AI. And now the stock market crash, those companies have had a pretty big reduction in value. And now all of a sudden, you don't hear the AI talk like you were hearing it before.
Also, Matthew, I got to read this, man. Dude, I'm about to crash out. At a time defined by the desire to build in America again, we have to throw off the burden of bad regulations that weigh down our innovators and use federal resources to test, to deploy, and to mature emerging technologies. We know, for example, the greatest obstacle to limitless energy in this country has been a regulatory regime opposed to innovation and development. This, too, has been the chief barrier to pushing the envelope again in transportation, whether supersonic aircraft or high-speed rail and flying cars.
Lies.
Bullshit. The reason why high-speed rail...
Listen, man, regulation is not the reason why we don't have limitless energy. It's the corporations is the reason why we don't have limitless energy, because those oil companies and these companies that, of course, rely on manufacturing fossil fuels, they lobby and they have money. And what talks in Washington? Money.
This is full of shit. Supersonic aircraft aren't a thing because they're just not economically viable. It's not that like the shadow government's hiding supersonic aircraft from you. We had them in the Concorde and they just were so unprofitable they got rid of them. So yeah, it's like regulations didn't kill them. The price of gas killed the supersonic plane. High-speed rail? Bullshit. The thing that's stopping them from innovating is the lack of money. And the U.S. government, hell or high water, won't give money to nobody for that. They won't give money to Brightline. They won't give money to Amtrak. They won't give money to shit to make high-speed rail. Right now, as a matter of fact, while this guy is talking about implementing high-speed rail, y'all know what the current administration is talking about? They finally made it to it, Matthew. They're talking about, why are we spending money on Amtrak? What is going on with this? And so they're going to axe the railroad programs while talking about, actually, we need high-speed rail. So while they're going to absolutely kill off the remaining life support for the sad little rail system that we have right now, they're then going to bitch, oh, where's the high-speed rail? It's like, you don't have it because you're not putting enough money into them. It's like we put $600 billion, well, actually, we put $65 billion a year into maintaining the interstates at a bare minimum. You know how much we give Amtrak a year? $2.2 billion. And then we act like they're supposed to make magic out of that. It's like we just put $65 billion in a year into filling potholes on the interstate. Not even big improvements like remaking bridges or repaving entire interstates, just fixing potholes. We can't even give Amtrak $2.3 billion to own their trackage or create their own new high-speed routes. We won't give them shit. And then we're always going, why are there no high-speed trains? We don't have them because nobody's giving them money. That, like, you have to put in an initial investment.
I got bad news for you. The feds just canceled a $64 million grant the other day for the high-speed project connecting Dallas and Houston. They ended that, at least according to the articles I'm seeing right now. So that's actually like they chopped that one up.
Yeah, I know. And it's so stupid. It's so stupid. The traffic was there. It was there. They were going to make a triangle. They were going to make a triangle in between Dallas and Houston, Houston and Austin and Dallas. Well, actually, it was going to connect Fort Worth, too. It was going to use freaking Shinkansens, people. It was going to actually bring Japanese Shinkansens to the United States. Like, crazily enough, that sounds insane, but that's actually what they were planning on doing. And they were going to do it. And it has the population density and the distance for the trips that makes it competitive. It's more competitive than a plane in that distance, and it's cheaper. And they just axed it. They just axed the first leg of it. Like, it's just absolutely insane. And then they go, where's the trains? You don't get the trains because you're not putting the money in. You got to put the money in first, just like we did with the airports and the interstates. The airports and the interstates didn't pop up for free. They popped up because the government poured hundreds of billions of dollars, trillions of dollars into those programs. We have to do the same thing for rail to actually make it work, because we can make a entirely fleshed out public transportation system that is the most effective in the world, that would be the envy of the world if we just properly appropriated the money and resources for it. If we made aircraft remain to be the top competitor, the only competitor for long distance cross-continent travel, that works. Then we make the trains the intermediate range traveling system. Then for every other remaining distance, there's buses, cars, trolleys, those sorts of things. You can make it work. You can get from point A to point B anywhere in the country on that kind of a system. It requires the funding to do it, though. And it requires the maintenance and upkeep to make it effective. And Matthew's sitting down there like the doubting voice in the chat. Poor trains, a relic of former self. Dude, trains can make it, man.
Listen, Jack. The trains, they go down, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, Jack.
You know the thing.
You know the thing, Jack. You know the thing. Dude, this just... And then flying cars. Do y'all know how many people die in auto accidents in non-flying cars that have rubber tires on concrete roads? 40,000 people a year get killed in car accidents. Imagine how many clown idiots are going to get themselves killed in flying cars. I can already imagine it. It's going to be like the air disasters is going to have limitless content when flying cars become mainstream. That's not going to become mainstream because some jackass is going to fly it over an international airport and ram it into a 737 on final. Like, that's not happening. So, like, the flying car thing is stupid. Honestly, that just doesn't make any sense. It's like, why waste all of that excess energy for a flying car when a rolling car on a road gets the same place at the same speed and uses far less energy and is far more efficient? That just doesn't make any sense.
But China has a flying car.
Yeah, but that's a gimmick. Like, they're never going to make that thing mainstream.
I actually saw like a guy flying in it.
Yeah, that was Speed, wasn't it? He was in a flying car, like, Speed,
Speed?
Yeah.
Oh, you're talking about that fellow, that streamer fellow?
Yeah, that streamer guy who's now in Mongolia, he was in that flying car in China. But dude, those things are just an absolute, like, they're a death trap and a waste. Like, really, that's why they never caught on in the first place. Because we've had plenty of flying car concepts in America that did work, but they were either way too expensive or they just didn't make any sense. And also, you have to get a pilot's license for them anyways, because the current FAA regulations, because they're an aircraft. So no one's going to be doing that, because who in the hell is going to spend all that money to get a pilot's license to fly around in their car? Like, none of that makes any sense. And also saw Timothy saying flying cars don't need roads. Yeah, but you know what really does need roads, though? Everything else that isn't a car, like 18-wheelers and stuff. So, at that point, you're moving people into flying cars, which are going to be a lot more dangerous in reality. And you're still going to have to maintain the interstate infrastructure for ground transport, because that's still going to be the cheapest, most economical way to move things. Because UPS is going to be going, yeah, let's take our cheap vans that we drive around the city that are able to transport our goods for relatively cheap, and let's put them into a giant flying van that's going to be a lot more expensive to maintain and also fly, and then also have to pay a licensed pilot to fly that thing around and also drop off the packages. Like, they're going to be like, hell no, we're still going to use the roads because it's cheaper. And so flying cars will never happen. High-speed rail would happen if they just gave it money. Like, high-speed rail is possible right now. It's just that they won't give it enough money. There is no more innovation needed for high-speed rail. It could just happen if they gave it money. Instead, they're cutting it. Like, they're cutting more money for that stuff. And they're going, where are the trains? It's like, come on, land. Like all of them have been doing that. Like, Biden did it. Trump did it in his last term. Obama did it. And then they're all like, oh, where are the trains? It's like, well, you're not giving them any money. We gotta have money to do it. Like, that's how it works. But anyways, the time has come to review the rules on the books and to ask whom they really protect and what they really cost. We're going to chop down Yellowstone. We're going to cut down all the trees. But anyways, with that, it is time for us to move on to the next one, because we have yip-yapped on that long enough.
All right, so our next one goes to Leora Avagail, who puts in a $20 donation in. Thank you very much, Leora, for that support, and we appreciate that very much. And Leora says, for the Enforcer Fund, to keep the channel to keep on going, and what do you guys drink? Not alcohol, not coffee. What keeps you going? Absolutely nothing keeps me going except for just insanity, honestly. I think I've taught myself into insanity, to wake up every day and just not have alcohol, coffee, actually I do have a little bit of coffee, but not a whole bunch. But no alcohol, no weed, no speed, no nothing. I don't do nothing like that. I just wake up and I try to go. That's as simple as it gets for me. Very simple in that life. But Enforcer, what say you?
Thank you so much for the support. And much like Matthew, I'm a very similar person. I drink water and milk, and that's it. That's all I drink. Well, actually, I drank a little bit of orange juice a while ago, and I did have a Coca-Cola like a couple of weeks ago. But beyond that, I don't really, do any of those things. I guess that's why it's so easy for me to talk on them, because some people are like, you're only 20, you know nothing about snorting coke, and I'm like, yeah, I probably don't, because I don't. It's like, that's like, so, fair point. That's probably why it's easy for me to just say, don't do it, because I never have, and never really had an inclination to. But we just keep running on pure insanity. And I remember back in the day, folks, because I'm a very energetic person, that people used to come on the show and they'd be like, man, is he on drugs? It's like, no, I'm high on life, folks. I'm high on life. I don't need any of that stuff to get me going. It's a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful thing, because sometimes in real life that's off-putting to people, because they're like, hey, I have to like absolutely get plastered drinking like 9 gin and tonics to be like that guy, and he's able to just act like that already. That's kind of a little weird. And I was like, yeah, but you know what? I'm going to make a living being like that. And here we are. So, kind of worked out. But still, I thank you so much for giving support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
I will say, though, I would make an exception for James Gin, like that James May, like gin that he came out with. Yeah. I would make an exception to try that, just because, I've wanted to try it. Sadly, I was wanting to get a bottle of that just for decoration, not to chug it or become an alcoholic or something, but just to have it like for the dust, because it looks pretty cool. Like, I like it. So, and obviously I'm a huge fan of the Top Gear trio. So, if I can try to support the Top Gear trio to keep them running, I would do it. But, I know no James Gin for me, sadly. They don't sell in Alabama, which is a shame. But jumping into our next super chat, this one goes to Ray Block. And Ray puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, Ray, for that support. They said, hey, Matt, is it legal to build a command center like Moscow's here in the U.S.? And if civilians used it to target Russians, would that be allowed or need to go underground? And no, civilians can't target anybody in a foreign country. That would be illegal, I would say. But building a command center like Moscow's, which command center is you referring to, Enforcer?
I don't really know. I was kind of confused. I was actually about to ask you about that. I was like, what command? I don't know what command center. Like the Kremlin, the Legislative Assembly, the Ministry of Defense. I don't really know of a command bunker in Moscow per se.
Is he talking about in the Moscow Oblast? They have like that mountain that has like Putin's bunker in it. Is he talking about that?
I actually don't know.
Or is that even in the Moscow Oblast? I don't even think that's there. Actually, I think it's somewhere else.
Yeah, I think that's like all the way out in like Kazan or something, like way out there in the distance.
Yeah, I actually now I take that back. I don't think it is in Moscow. I think it's pretty far out because I don't think there's any real mountains around Moscow, is there?
No, it's just a flat plain out near Moscow. Like here's like Elk Island. This is like their little national forest, and this is in Moscow, and it's pretty flat. You know, it's a pretty flat area. It's a plain, so I would doubt that there's hills around there.
Oh, okay. I see what people were clarifying it. They say I think they meant the person flying drones from a skyscraper, and that actually was not a command center. That was just a normal civilian building. It looked like a hotel to me. That the guy had set up like this Pelican case or this like armored case with like all this drone tech in it, and he was allegedly piloting FPV drones on the battlefield in Ukraine from Moscow from a civilian building, which is obviously not correct and it's not right. But it looked like what they were doing, and then they took the video down once they got exposed.
Hey, that's not cool, bro. You're not supposed to do that. But that was in Moscow.
You need to leave.
You need to leave. But let's see. Let's take $106 a night to stay in this hotel. Well, at least the hotels are cheap. But let's take a look. This is a Holiday Inn.
There's my coffee pot over there.
Yeah, your percolator and everything.
That's not a percolator, it's an espresso.
This looks dystopian.
Oh, look at that mirror right there. You know the FSB's got some some stuff behind that mirror.
Some surveillance tech.
That's usually where cameras are at behind those mirrors, by the way, folks. Those are usually one-way glass. Like there's usually a bunch of like surveillance cameras behind those, if you didn't know.
I'm not gonna lie, dude. This hotel is actually pretty low quality for it to be in Moscow City. Like the cheapest furniture possible.
What's that? MC Traders. What was that?
Restaurant
Minecraft Traders?
Bar. Flint and Steel chicken jockey. I'm like, that's it, bro. You go in there, just get assaulted by a brain rot. But dude, the food looks terrible. This is your view.
Yeah. It looks like the off-brand version of London.
Oh yes, dude. London looks so much better than that. Like that is disrespecting London. Honestly, let's go to the Shard and let's compare skylines. Let's go to the Shard. Where's the Shard?
They have the same nasty water, at least.
Hey, don't diss on the Thames. The Thames is toxic, dude. You fall in there, you drop dead. No joke.
Oh man, you go to like the nicest building in London, and you say, "Oh, this is so much nicer." Obviously, the Shard's gonna be nicer. It's one of the like the newest,
dude,
nicest
we were in the nicest building in Moscow City, right there. No joke. That's why we're comparing. Matthew. That's what we're doing. Wait a minute. So where was tell me, Matthew, since you're the expert now, where were those nicer buildings in Moscow? They're in Moscow City, right? Because it's like the only area built up with skyscrapers. We were in the literal skyscraper in the middle of Moscow City, dude.
Let's see here. I'm trying to think of the name of it. There was a building there that was like really, really nice. I'm trying to think. Dang, hold on. Let me think. What is the nicest high-rise building in Moscow? The Federation Tower. They pull that up.
Okay, the Federation. Dude, that sounds like something from Call of Duty. We're about to attack the Federation Tower. It's the building I was in right there.
Oh, that was the building.
Yeah. So that was the nicest building in Moscow.
This is actually well known as the flagship building of Moscow. So this actually is it. So let's see here. Luxury apartments, Moscow City Capitals Tower. Let's say I want to go get myself an apartment in Moscow because I apparently don't like my life very much. So I'm going to go there and get myself a little apartment and wait for the FSB to show up in it one night. Let's see here. A 1-bedroom, double bed, apartment flat. Where's the cost? I'm trying to look for the cost. That's what's most important. How much does it cost? Enter dates to see prices. Let me give them some information. Not a good idea, but let's see. Oh, it says just missed it. Oh, whoops. Let me go ahead and change my dates. Let's see here. Oh, I just missed it again. Oh, that's weird. They don't have apartments for rent. Let's double check. Let's see here. Let's see. I want prices. I want prices. Entire apartment. That's weird. It's like not giving me any prices for some reason. They must not like my American dollars. And it's not giving me any prices. I don't know what's up with that. Let me try a different date. Let's see here. Checking again. And nope, it's not giving me any dates at all. So apparently they don't like our American dollars. They don't want us there.
They don't want us there, Matthew, because they're racist. But basically, this is the nicest part of the Russian Federation right there. And you were doubting me, Matthew. You're like, oh, you're going to the nicest skyscraper in Britain? Hell yeah, I am, because it's like literally perfectly comparable. But let's take a look at this, Matthew. What does the skyline of London look like? That looks so much better than Moscow.
Yeah, I will admit that looks a lot better.
That looks way better by every single degree. We actually did get to see London at night from like a view like this, an angle like this. Maybe we would call it an angula, Merkel. But still, it is a very nice place, London. Really like it so. And still, what a place. Honestly, man, London was cool. London was pretty cool. Really like London. London's one of my favorite cities, by the way, folks. But anyways, with that, it is time for us to move on. Oh, like the Tower of London right down there. His Majesty's Palace and Fortress, the Tower of London. What a cool place. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that somewhat well. But London, British folks, y'all got a very nice looking capital city. Very nice indeed. But anyways, with that, it is time for us to move on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support.
All right, so our next one goes to Dade Carnes, also known as Raid, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Dade, for that $10 support and also help to keep the channel running. I do not see a comment attached, but thank you very much once again for that support. And our next one goes to Dave Wilson, who puts in a 10. And thank you, Dave, as well for that support. He said, Iran actually is as active as LA for earthquakes, almost constant at some level.
Oh, that's crazy. I guess you could say they get some of the tremors. Maybe they're shaking in their boots. If they even wear boots. But still, thank you once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Simplify EDC guy, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Simplify, for that support. They said, apologies. I think my comment came out wrong. And you guys obviously know your stuff. But giving this current U.S. admin, his credit is kind of nuts. I love the channel, by the way. And the Ukraine-Russia coverage is excellent.
Thank you so much for the support. And I think I may have misunderstood. Usually, though, when comments come in worded like that, usually we assume that they're hostile because usually people go and crash out right after they send something like that. So don't take it personally. It's just a knee-jerk reaction at this point. Yeah, look, we don't get political on this channel. Like, people don't get that. Like, I criticize when the criticism is fair, and I'll give fair dues when they're due. Like, I don't really discriminate. Like, in the Biden administration, we would say that some things they were doing were good, they could be better, or that they were good, or that they were bad. And with the current administration, we'll say that things are bad or they're good. Like, we're not like a partisan channel that's like, oh, well, it's Biden, so he's perfect, and Trump is a devil, or vice versa, where Trump is perfect and Biden's a devil. It really is as fairly analyzed here as we possibly can make it. But I do thank you for the support and the kind words and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible. And so a big thanks to you once again, and we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Adam McLean, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Adam, for that support. He said, it's been a long time now, and ever since day one, I've never, ever been slightly let down with any of the content. You guys are rock solid day in and day out.
Hey, and thank you so much for the kind words and the support and helping this channel to keep on running. We're glad to make sure that we can keep a high standard each and every single day. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Captain Jenks, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Captain, for that support. They said, if Iran's nuclear sites are attacked, won't that bring an environmental catastrophe
to the limited surrounding area? That's not going to be like Chernobyl or anything. If we hit, like, say, the centrifuges at Natanz, what would happen is that some nuclear residue would get into the surrounding areas in a very limited range, less than a mile away, and the radioactivity would be low. So it wouldn't be producing like a Chernobyl. It wouldn't be creating a nuclear wasteland out of Iran, but the impacts would be incredibly minor. But still, I hope that does address that well, and I thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Will M, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Will, for that support. He said, what do you think, or what do you thinking about the Chinese soldier robots taking Taiwan?
I haven't heard of soldier robots. I've heard of robot dogs with flamethrowers on them, but that's kind of like a gimmick. Uh, so I would have to declare ignorance on that at this point. So I thank you for the support and help this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that somewhat well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to John Allen, who puts into 5. And big shout to John for that support. He said, do you see a larger role for our allies in the Pacific, Japan, South Korea, and Australia in the near future?
Yes, they're mostly going to be involved in containing the Chinese with us in the future, and that will require close strategic and economic cooperation by all of us to ensure that. So with that, I hope that does address that well, and I thank you once again for support and help this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Chaos Reigns All, who puts in a 5. And big shout to Chaos Reigns All. They said, I think if you can grow it, it should be allowed. And what is your opinion on these mushrooms? Illegal or no, regulated or no, medical or no? Honestly, man, I'll tell you, like, I wouldn't touch the stuff. I really would not touch it. I know some people out there, even some celebrities, swear by the stuff and they say, oh, it's changed my perspective and worldview. I think my worldview is good enough right now the way it is. I don't need any mushrooms to help me out with that. And whatever these people are seeing while they're on that, I'm like, you know, that's just, I just don't like to play around with that kind of stuff. It seems dangerous. It seems like, even though it may not necessarily kill you, or I'm not really sure if it will or won't, but I've heard it won't necessarily kill you. That just seems risky. And why take the risk if it's unnecessary, in my opinion? And it seems highly unnecessary. But Enforcer, what say you?
Here's my opinion on it. Like, this might sound a little extreme because usually people want to make things legal and illegal based off of public good. I find any kind of psychoactive or mind-altering substances to be incredibly dangerous just due to the fact that it alters your mental state or that it makes you impaired for some time. I find that to be dangerous in its own self, and for that reason, I wouldn't touch the stuff. However, I wouldn't generally make it illegal. I would generally say that that is something that requires a significant health advisory, but, you know, wouldn't really generally be illegal. I mean, if people want to do it, they're going to do it. You know, you you can only stop people from doing things that are detrimental to themselves or their health so much until you say, all right, look, you know, it's a free country, you can do whatever the hell you want, and if it ends up hurting you, it hurts you. But, you know, there's a giant bold warning label on this item here. I wouldn't take it. That would be my general take on it. But that's how I look at it. Like, I generally don't believe that the government really should be getting involved in trying to regulate those sorts of things. Of course, they should be regulating that you should not be impaired while driving, quite obviously. But beyond that, you know, actually taking it, like, as long as it's within the confines of your own home and you're not causing any kind of a public disturbance or creating dangerous driving or roadway conditions, I really don't see that much of an issue with people using it. It's just that I personally wouldn't use it, and I find the stuff to be quite dangerous. But with that,
Also, Chaos Reigns All said, I hear you, Enforcer Matt. Well, what if it's medically necessary? And thanks for the input. I've heard, at least I've heard this. I'm not an expert in it. Once again, I want to make that clear up front. But I've heard that the mushroom thing is being experimented or at least researched for use in people with like really, really bad clinical depression. If it's something that a doctor deems medically necessary or that it might help somebody that has no other options, I'm not against that. I mean, if someone's like, you know, having a crisis where they're, you know, debating bad things, maybe it would be a better option to try that than to try nothing. But of course, that comes up to a doctor that has the expertise to make that call, and not just like your average Joe Blow on the street saying, I'm just going to give it a go because it might help. You know, you might want to consult a doctor who has the knowledge to actually say that or not. But if it's something medically necessary, then go right ahead. I'm all for it. If a doctor says they want to prescribe you like marijuana to treat depression or something, and a doctor says go for it, I'm for that as well. But I'm just not for, you know, going and doing this stuff just recklessly and people just going out and, you know, jumping on it because they just feel like it. I'm not really for that.
I think Matthew and me would disagree a little bit on that, because me personally, should the government really get involved in making all of these things illegal? I mean,
Oh, not the government. I'm not saying they should make it illegal. I'm just saying if the doctor like wants to give it to you and it's medically necessary, that's not a legal thing. That's a doctor thing.
Well, no, I'm saying, like, you know, if someone wants to just go and say, hey, I want to go buy some from, you know, a dispensary kind of a store and give it a shot. Like, I would say, I honestly think that's stupid, but, you know, you can only protect people from their own stupidity for so far. Just slap a giant warning label on that thing like it's a packet of cigarettes and say, warning, this could be dangerous for your health, and leave it at that. So if someone's going to be dumb enough to try it at that point, it's like that's on them. But I wouldn't, I'm not going to be one of those people who's like, oh, we got to go on a giant, manhunt to find these people, arrest them, and put them in prison. It's like, well, if you're dumb enough to get on that, and you somehow got addicted to it, even with a giant warning label on the thing and everything, it's like, well, that was more on you than anything, Like the government, I don't really believe that the government has a responsibility, to put it in a blunt way, to protect people from their own stupidity. So if someone wants to go out of their way to do something that could be considered dangerous, and then something happens to them, it's like, well, no one's really responsible for that but the risk taker, for the large part, in my opinion. I would certainly not be one of those risk takers, but if other people want to take on the risks, be warned, but go ahead. That's how I look at it.
Yeah, I would say so. Also, by the way, I don't know if people knew this or did know this, but there was a guy, actually, one of the psychoactive drugs like LSD, lysergic acid or whatever it's called. The guy who actually developed that, and also if you didn't know, the CIA actually developed that drug. They were experimenting with different mind control techniques back when there was like the Wild West days in the CIA for like trying to
Under
how to
Alan
hack
Dulles.
the human mind. Yeah, and also there was Sidney Gottlieb was involved in that. A guy named Frank Olson accidentally somehow took LSD, and they're really not clear how he took it. Some people have some hypothesis that maybe the guy got on the bad side, and maybe he, sort of accidentally got a little bit of it, dosed it or something. But he actually ended up falling out of a window or jumping out of a window or something, and ended up dead from an LSD trip. Because that's how dangerous this stuff can be. It can make you have hallucinations, and you can do stupid things. So, and that was even the government scientists experimenting with it. And if they're, accidentally falling out and jumping out of windows and stuff like that, that's quite interesting to see that, actually.
Yeah, I just generally would say I wouldn't touch it. If people are going to touch it, they're going to do it anyways. It's like just honestly, I think the only due diligence the government really has is to smack a warning label on something like that and say you shouldn't. And then beyond that, that's on you. It's like if you want to do it and something bad happens to you, well, that's unfortunate, but you took the risk. And, it's not like the government didn't do its due diligence by creating legislation that requires that there's a warning label on the packaging clearly displayed. That's about all you can do. That's what I would think. Because going around and trying to get these people for this kind of stuff, it's like, especially if it's within the confines of their own home and they're not impaired while they're driving or anything, I find it to be a little bit tough to push forward the idea that this is bad for society. Because, like, looking at it from a perspective of, are they causing any harm to others, on that kind of an aspect of law enforcement, as long as they're in the confines of their own home and they're not operating a motor vehicle on a public roadway, possibly endangering others while they're impaired, they're really not causing any harm to anyone. So if they want to do that, I think it's stupid, but go ahead. But, I'm not going to go out of my way to try and stop these people either. It's like a warning label is as far as I'd go, pretty much telling them, I don't know, I mean, maybe you want to reconsider. And if they go on past the warning label and, they go jump out of a window, it's like, who's responsible for that? It's like, we gave them a warning. They still, ate the forbidden fruit, like almost quite literally. And then something bad happened from it. It is what it is at this point. But anyways, I hope that does address that somewhat well, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Buzz Blades, who puts into 5. And thank you very much, Buzz, for that support. They said for the LSA War Chest, and take one from the chat.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support, and thank you for supporting the LSA War Chest, and helping us to ensure that we will be able to be prepared for a state of YouTube war, which hopefully will never happen again. But in case if it does, we will be ready. And I got to thank you so much once again, and we are on to the live chat question, Your Honor. So what do we got, Matthew?
And the live chat question goes to Frostbright Productions. He says, Enforcer Matt, did you guys happen to get the satellite imagery of all the barges stalled in the waters due to the tariffs? And LOL, it's looking like a ship graveyard. And I haven't seen that, but Enforcer, have you seen that?
I don't think I've seen that. Let's see. The barges stalled in the water. Let me just type that in. And let's see here. You can usually find a massive barges. I might not be impressed by a picture like this because there's usually a lot of barges on the Mississippi that I've seen before. So if you're talking about something like this, that isn't really too shocking because I've seen a lot of barges like that many times before. But I can't find anything on it when I typed it in on the internet. So unfortunately, I'd have to declare ignorance. But I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Bad, POG, who puts in a 2, and thank you very much for that support. They said the Pentagon's Digital Defense Service completely quit.
I didn't hear about that. That's interesting to hear, and I thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we've got a 2 from Plazoth and also J-Man, who put in a 2 as well. And thank you very much to Plazoth and J-Man for that support and also helping to keep the channel running. And guess what, Plazoth and Jay, you're going to take us right into our live chat questions of the night, because that is all of our super chats that we have. So once again, big shout out to everybody tonight for supporting the channel and helping keep it running, because it's that support that does keep it running. It does mean a lot. So we are now going to thank the rest of the viewers for watching in the live chat question segment. But up first, we got the Morse code decoders of the stream. And tonight we had Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Bernew, Kevin J, Paul Schultz, Dave Millsaps, her Royal Fluffiness, Arabelle Garbo, Johnny Dog, and Norm Pritchett. They said, the Morse says, can we go get some of those freshly cooked Russian conscripts? Cooked well done. Oh, geez. And also, even the Morse code decoder said, geez, guys, honestly, crazy.
I ran out of stuff, but and that was the sound of money, and y'all got that down on the nail. That was the Morse code message of the night. That one was a little bit of a tougher one, but I couldn't really come up with anything. That was the best thing I had on my mind at the moment, so that was the Morse code message. But nevertheless, y'all did get that correct, and I got to congratulate y'all for getting that correct on the 1,148th day of the war, because y'all continue to get that correct time and time again. And so with that, it's time for us to move on into some live chat questions. I'll be honest with you, Matthew. I think the conditions of my sore throat are continuing because I'm talking a lot on air. Because every time I start the stream, my throat feels bad, but it generally feels all right. And by the end of the stream, it feels like absolute hell. It feels like ants have literally eaten the back of my throat out. So I think we will get as many live chats as we can. But, you know, we're going to have to keep that in mind. So with that, we are on to the first live chat of this segment.
So this one goes to AF Kaplan, who said, if Israel were to strike Iran without U.S. approval, do you think the current admin would cut off aid to Israel?
I don't know. That's a good question. Honestly, that's like a paradox. I don't really know how that would work, because if anyone ever has been like sheltered from the horrors affecting Ukraine and Taiwan, it's been Israel. Like, Israel is not really affected by that at all. So I don't know how that would, how the reaction to that would work. I don't know, really. That's actually a great question. I have a feeling that they probably wouldn't be cut off from support. That would be my honest take. But with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Activista, who said, I think the U.S. should be seriously concerned about overextending geopolitically, and what are your thoughts?
The United States is a global superpower. We're not really extending too far by having a finger in the pie in the East Asian area, the Middle East, and Eastern Europe. As a matter of fact, we're actually pretty much well within our league doing that sort of a thing. So I would say that's not really overextension, but we do need to make sure to deal with each case appropriately, where we're not using a sledgehammer or a scalpel in the wrong kind of an instance. Right now, Eastern Europe and the Middle East require sledgehammers, and more so at this point, the East Asian situation requires more of a scalpel. But with that, I hope that does address that well, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Old Warrior, who says, I saw where Vietnam allegedly has a lot of rare earths, and any knowledge of that?
I haven't heard about that, and I haven't really researched that specifically. So unfortunately, I would not know for sure. But I wouldn't doubt it, because the Southeast Asian area actually is resource rich for the larger part, so I wouldn't doubt that it is a pretty valuable place in terms of resources, just that I wouldn't really know off the top of my head. But nevertheless, it is time for us to move on to the next one. So what do we got, Matthew?
And our next one is actually a super chat. It is from a channel legend. It is Margaret Hemsley, who puts in the 15 Australian. And thank you very much, Margaret, for that $15 support. And we do appreciate that very much. And Margaret said, this super chat is dedicated to my new granddaughter, who shares her birthday as Catherine de Medici and Guy Fawkes, and also Thomas Jefferson. And may she have the dedication and intellect of Jefferson.
And a huge thank you for the support, and a massive shout out to your new granddaughter, who I believe was born today, the same day as Catherine de Medici, Guy Fawkes, and Thomas Jefferson. Matthew, you were very close on that first one. I'm proud of you. You almost got it right. I was very proud of you, Matthew. Do you hear me? I'm proud of you. I tell you, I'm proud of you. But nevertheless,
I was so close.
He was so close. But beyond that, I do thank you so much for the support, and a huge congratulations for becoming a grandmother on this day to a brand new, beautiful granddaughter. And so a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And our next one here is going to go to, let's see, this one goes to Brittany Coy, who says, are there any medications or anything crucial that we only get from China? And a few years ago, I know that there were some medicines or ingredients that only China manufactured or had.
I actually wouldn't know that off the top of my head. Unfortunately, pharmaceuticals is more out of my wheelhouse than in it. So unfortunately, I wouldn't be able to tell you that one per se. So sadly, I'd have to declare ignorance on that. But Matthew, do you know more?
Oh, so when it comes to the medications, I would say that generally speaking, there's nothing that we couldn't manufacture here domestically. But I let's see here. I'm actually asking ChatGPT. Actually, I'm just going to be straight up honest, real quick. I'm trying to stall for time while it comes up with the answer. ChatGPT is having a hard time with this one too. By the way, that's really having a very hard time actually. But it looks like China develops and manufactures modern drugs. Some of them are cancer drugs. Some of them are some other drugs I can't pronounce. And honestly, it really doesn't have the answer. I'll be honest with you. I have to declare ignorance myself.
I'd have to.
Hello?
I'd have to say, thank you for sharing that. I was actually trying to look at the chat and some other stuff right there. But I thank you so much once again for trying to find an answer. And it appears that we'll be moving on to the next one. As I flounder right there, I'm floundering, Matthew.
All right. So also our audio keeps cutting out for some reason on my end of the Discord call. But anyways, we are now jumping on to our next live chat question. And this one goes to Judy from the live chat, who said, why does Israel have to ask the U.S. if they can strike Iran, and that they should have went ahead and done it without telling the United States? Oh, that would have been bad. Israel has preferential status with the United States. I think it's pretty obvious to most irrational people. There's obviously a preference toward Israel, but if they did that, they would be basically insulting the president of the United States. And right now, if there's any time not to insult the president of the United States, when we have different presidents every 4 years, this is not the time to do it if you're a foreign country. And that would probably not go good for Israel. It doesn't matter how preferential Israel is to the United States. That would override everything if you insulted the ego of the president. So I would say that would not be good. But Enforcer, what say you?
How dare you say he has an ego? That is so political. Someone's about to say that, man, honestly. But that is true. Matthew's largely dead on the nail there. That probably would get them cut off from further U.S. military support, and we pretty much provide them every single airframe that they're using right now. So that would be a bit of an issue for them in the long term. But with that, I hope that does address that well, at least the best I can, in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the third to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Dalton LMAO, who says, what do y'all think about the odds of World War III? And thanks, guys. You're doing a great job. And honestly, I think you'd have to break it down on each individual problem. There's probably three major problems right now that would cause World War III. The China-Taiwan situation, and now the implication of the trade war, that's one major flashpoint. Obviously, the Ukraine and Russia war is another major flashpoint. Also, the fact that Russia might invade a NATO country in the Baltics. And now the Iran nuclear situation is the next one. So there's three major hotspots, and that's not even including North Korea. I'm going to sort of leave that one out. I would say the other three are a lot bigger than the North Korea situation right now. But I would say between those three, the odds are probably higher than ever. But even at that, the odds are definitely not, in favor of World War III. But it's certainly looming around. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say it's probably about a 10 to 15% chance at this point. Still on the lower side. It's not a definite guarantee. Because while things are getting close, it's not completely across the precipice at this point, or it's getting right there at it. So I'd still say it's around 10 to 15% chance. So I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one goes to In Hansen, who says, the depth of the earthquake is a good indication as to whether or not it was a nuke. And did the Iranians really dig that deep?
We don't really know a lot of information about the prior earthquakes rather than they happened and the specific magnitudes. So, unfortunately, I wouldn't be able to say where that earthquake originated from inside the Earth's crust to be able to give a good answer to that. So, I'd have to declare ignorance at this moment, unfortunately. And so, with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who was the lucky last person who put in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is going to be Pixel Lord M, who says, what's your guys' opinion on ASEAN, ASEAN, and could it replace China for manufacturing goods and be a sort of EU of the Pacific?
And ASEAN is, if I remember correctly, it is the, it's some sort of Southeast Asian Economic Alliance. I don't know the exact name of it. Let me go type it in to get you all the name. the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. It's actually a fairly large economic alliance, which quite literally does include the entirety of Southeast Asia. It is possible that it can replace China in terms of manufacturing prowess, but I actually feel more so that ASEAN is not really the vehicle, or ASEAN, as Matthew's calling it in the chat, is really the vehicle that we're looking for that kind of economic progress. It can be a part of it, but really the only country right now that's really spurning the wheels of progress is Vietnam. I have a feeling that we're probably going to find a lot more economic prosperity to be had in the Republic of India and Mexico more so, because they provide cheap manpower pools, and they also have some capital to be able to invest in bringing manufacturers in and also helping them to produce their new assemblies, factories and such, without having to really try and build it from the ground up. Burma, also called Myanmar in the present day, is embroiled in civil war and is highly unstable. Laos and Cambodia are largely impoverished on a national level, and while they do have some limited economic progress, it is not enough to actually bring significant manufactories of any kind or largely incentivize them to come in because there's a lot of missing critical infrastructure. Thailand is a possibility and does have a major port, which is a huge benefit for Thailand, but I haven't really heard them in the competition or in the running right now to produce a large amount of things beyond textiles. The Brunei isn't really an option. Malaysia may be an option. Singapore is more so of a shipping mogul than anything. They won't ever get into manufacturing. They don't have the land for it. The Philippines doesn't really seem to be either. So out of all of those, really out of the entire of the ASEAN alliance, it is Vietnam and Thailand that would have the best shot at it, but not really the whole of the ASEAN group. So once again, while there is some limited possibility there, I have a feeling that India, Mexico, and Vietnam are really where it lies, instead of just specifically within ASEAN alone. But I do thank you so much for asking a very interesting question. And before we round out tonight, we actually do have two more super chats, as Buzz Blads threw in a 10 Australian and said, for the T Fund. What?
Buzz Blades, you mean?
Buzz Blades, yeah, Buzz Blades.
I said Buzz Blads.
I always said that. I always meant to say that, man. What are you talking about? But he said, for the T Fund, try Bushels Extra Strong. And I thank you for the support. And I'm going to give it a shot because this whole sore throat thing, I've gotten better and I sound better. I'm not really coughing anymore, but this whole sore throat thing keeps on going. But I do thank you once again for the support. And Adam McLean also threw in a 10 and said, super good super chat. And thank you for the super good super chat, Adam McLean, and helping this channel to keep on running, as well as Buzz Blades. And also, finally, we have a $5 super chat from Ryan H. It said, would the U.S. military be able to simultaneously fight a full-scale war with Iran and defend Taiwan from a Chinese invasion? Well, we could certainly school them, like I was about to say there. Matthew started laughing at everything. You must be getting tired. But we could actually fight both wars at the same time, because both of them would require different kinds of equipment and resources and different branches as their primary fighting forces, so we could actually deal with them both at the same time. The answer to that would be yes, in my opinion. And so with that, I thank you so much for the support, Ryan H., Anna McLean, and Buzz Blades for the support, and we have reached the end of tonight's stream. I've got to thank you all massively, so much once again, for watching tonight. Over the course of this stream, we reached a peak viewership of 7.6 thousand people, and 53,000 people have watched this stream so far. It's not the largest night that we've had recently, but we are entirely honored and appreciative to have each and every single one of y'all here, and of course we thank you all greatly for considering this channel to be your primary source of news. We will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of the news from around the world. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die.
And thank you all for joining us once again tonight. And we will see you, of course, tomorrow night on the War News stream at 10 p.m. Eastern once again, and also midday tomorrow as well, if there is enough news for a short war video. But once again, big shout out to everybody joining us tonight, all 52,000 people and all 2,600 people that smashed that like button. And we do appreciate that very much. And of course, Slava Ukraine, Iram Slava, get some rest, and good night.
Stand up, oh. Straße.